out for that. The news update, the Michael Barr moment. It's brought to you by Cohn Resnick. Success isn't about playing to win. It's about planning to win. Cohn Resnick advisors, they help you anticipate the market forces at play to drive performance, manage risk, and gain a competitive edge. We thank Cohn Resnick for their support. Paul, what do you see on the screen?
Yeah, I see a little bit of red here, Tom. I mean, not much happening here. Just a little bit of got the S&P off about 0.2%. Same for the NASDAQ. Yeah, like, your VIX just still below. It's a little bit above 16, but still below 17. So we'll keep an eye on the VIX here. Yields steady. The 10-year Treasury. You're getting 4.13% for investing with your U.S. government for 10 years.
October 1, 8:15, we get ADP. Yes. That has nothing to do with the government.
Right.
I think ISM, John Farrow's favorite, that has nothing to do with the government. And then it gets ugly, like claims. That's state by state.
I don't know.
I sorry, folks. I should be briefed on this. It's my fault. No one else's. And then October 3rd, we get Veronica Clark's non-response.
Yeah, I mean the consensus out there is 51,000 change in non-farm payrolls.
It's Bloomberg's surveillance.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Well, traders, they're looking ahead to a series of U.S. labor reports that are due out this week to gauge the Fed's next move. That includes, yes, Friday's jobs report, but its release in question over thoughts of a government shutdown. Vice President J.D. Vance hinted about it after President Trump's meeting with congressional leaders. Well, it ended without a deal. We'll go to NASDAQ futures, down 0.1%. Dow futures falling 0.2%. Same for S&P futures. In the yield space, the 2-year 3.61%. That's little change, and the yield on the 10-year, that's a little change too, 4.14%. Gold surge, pausing after a 45% gain this year. We have COMEX gold down about 0.5%. Oil falling, WTI crude down 0.8% at $62 a barrel. The dollar slipping, erasing September's gains, down about 0.1%. To earnings we go. Jefferies Financial Group, it posted its best fiscal third quarter revenue ever. Deal activity picked up, market conditions improved, trading activity also coming in higher than a year ago. But shares have come down a bit. They're down about 0.5%. And shares of Vail Resorts, they are down 2%. The company says fewer season passes they were sold. Not many people skiing. That's ahead of the upcoming ski season. Just didn't keep up with it. Yeah, they couldn't. And then today we'll hear from Paychecks before the bell, Nike after the close. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. I'm Lisa Mateo. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. We go to surveillance. I'll never ski in the East again correspondent.
Yep.
Paul Sweeney. Vail tickets down. Why?
I tell you, the cost of skiing is out of control.
What is a lift ticket for a mere mortal?
It's what, two?
No. Well, around here in New Jersey, it's probably like $100.
Yeah, it's like $200 out west. The skis, the equipment, and taking a family, I don't know how.
So the fam to get on a mountain for one day is $2,000.
Yeah,
just fees
absolutely.
And
And then you got to feed the little ones, and
then the 12-year-old goes, I really don't want to do this.
Exactly.
Can I go?
That being said, the ski resorts out west are just
the
best in the world.
I do.
You do. I mean, you set them up and you're out there and the middle child goes,
yes.
I'm really not
Paid the
happy."
lift tickets, the rental fees went down once.
You throw them in ski school, and I'll see you at 4 o'clock. Yep.
Yeah, there's that draw, and there's the youngest child animal that's thrilled they're in ski school, but the middle child wants to go in and read Nancy Drew in the cabin. Good morning, everyone. We welcome all of you on an odd day here. I'm sporting, for those of you on radio, I'm sporting Red Sox garb here. They said to me, Tom, you look like Don Zimmer. I don't know if that was a compliment. What are you laughing about? Sean Simmons joins right now with a really smart letter, equity strategist at UBS. Audible to start. You have one of the most prestigious degrees in the business, statistics and quant modeling at Baruch. Discuss surviving the Zicklin School at Baruch.
Oh, it was excellent. I wouldn't trade for the world. I got to sit in New York City.
With a heritage
got a full
back
ride.
into the 20th century. You didn't come out with $400,000 of college loans, right?
Exactly. And we were here, right? So we got to meet all the banks. We got to network with people constantly. It was a great opportunity. I wouldn't trade my Baruch experience
I could just say
anything.
the heritage folks of the Baruch School, the intensity of it is one. What does that melding of statistics and quant modeling say about the oddest bull market of all time?
So there's a lot going into it. We've got a number of different quantitative models, and I'd probably start with our sector views right now. I mean, we're still very much maintaining people have to be focused on AI. They have to stay invested in that. And not only on kind of the classical AI trade, right? The semis, the utilities, we've seen those things move, but we're also now starting to talk more and more about the peripheral trade. So we want to be starting to talk about the software. These companies are helping, these companies that have large data but aren't data companies start implementing AI into their process. We want to start talking about AI robotics. And we're able to kind of use statistics at the single stock level to build out things that allow us to then aggregate into kind of more thematic components of the market to take views like that. So yeah, I would chalk that up to my statistics and modeling degree.
That's right. So how about valuation here, Sean? I'm sure you hear from your UBS clients a lot about, boy, I'm sure a lot of folks are concerned about valuation. How do you kind of frame that out for them?
There's no doubt. And there's probably two kind of key ways that we're thinking about it right now. One, we do an interesting work where we kind of break out the AI winners or the Mag 7 and the tech plus Mag 7 really from the rest of the market. So from that standpoint, we definitely are seeing elevated valuations in that part of the market. There's no question. We're seeing elevated valuations in the rest of the market as well, right? When the S&P 500 X Mag 7 in tech is trading at 18.6-ish right now, That's elevated versus what we would expect in history. Now, the thing to remember with valuations, though, is they can be an overhang for a long time. So really, we need kind of earnings momentum breakdown. We need kind of crowding to reach a certain point and see people start to exit for crowding to move to the forefront. So valuations, definitely are keeping an eye on them, but we're not seeing the drivers of that breakdown happening yet.
We need earnings to be strong, and certainly they have been strong in the first half of this year. How do you guys expect the third and fourth quarter to come in?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, we definitely had what I call a consensus low bar going into Q2. So I think myself and most of the kind of pundits across the street knew what we had just priced in terms of earnings revisions, the lowered expectations around macro data going into Q2. What we've seen now is a broadening out through August, and really that's coming on the back of that Q2 reporting. So we've written a bit about this over the past month, but with kind of coming out of the bowels of May of this year, we've seen a broader lift up. So we're starting to do the work to do our Q3 preview. I am probably expecting more of a normalized bar, and what that means is
Stop, it's surveillance. Give us the 2 decimal points, your earnings growth for ending September 30 today.
I've got to do more work on it for my preview into
so
Q3.
Lisa, he's so Baruch. I have to do more work. Are we doing double-digit earnings this quarter?
It's possible. That would be probably a strong surprise. Wouldn't necessarily be the sizable surprise we got in Q2.
How long did we get this 90 days ago, Paul?
Yeah, I know.
Incredible.
So we were thinking, mid-high single digits came in at double digits.
So, woe was me. We're all going to die. That worked out.
Sean, what else? Are there factors that you guys look at in this marketplace? Because a lot of folks, again, just feel like, I need to be in quality or I need to be with the positive momentum. How do you guys think about the factors?
Yeah, quality's been key for years. I think we've gone back and forth on talking quality since 2020, really. It's definitely on its day in the light. What's interesting is we've written a bit about PEG, actually, over
잠시
the
8시
past year, so
40분부터
PE growth,
약분기
which has
대장
been one of the
브리핑
lead
진행하도록
performing
하겠습니다.
factors over the past, call it, year and a half or so. And it's very much an unloved factor. A lot of market participants these days really don't want to talk about value growth.
Tell me about little trite phrases the media loves, like I detest the death cross on moving averages. Sell in May and go away. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, folks, out to September 29, up 13.8%.
Yeah.
How do pros like you deal with a clientele that's been weaned on cute phrases back to Bernard Baruch?
Yeah, seasonality is important. When everybody is talking about the same seasonal patterns in a year like this, when we've got a lot of cross currents, you kind of need to keep your finger on the pulse throughout all of that. So, coming out of what we were coming out of and to that sell in May concept this year, there was a lot of discussion about seasonals, which you have to start to question when everybody's talking the same pulse.
What do you do with cash? As an equity strategist, what do you do with cash?
Right now it's tough to be non-invested. When we're talking to clients, a lot of the sentiment.
Far too optimistic for surveillance.
He's a young guy. Be optimistic.
He's
got a long
a
investment
lot of
horizon.
the sentiment pre-FOMC was, I want to be short, but I can't. I don't want to be long, but I have to be. And I think that sentiment kind of goes straight to the cash component as well.
So what's the sentiment right now?
I definitely think it's turned. We were over in Europe when we got the FOMC. It definitely is becoming more positive. I don't know that it's necessarily broadening out yet in the way that we're expecting across sectors. Right. But people are sizing up, I would say, is what we've heard.
You're over in Europe. Europeans, do they want to buy U.S. equities these days?
Definitely on the back of the Fed, more so. There was definitely a shift from I don't want to touch it to I don't want to fight the Fed.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Sean, good stuff. Appreciate it. Sean Simons, he's equity strategist at UBS. Over there on the 11 Madison Avenue, that's the old First Boston building.
Oh, they have good restaurants down there.
They do.
They do.
Before it was the 11 Madison, that restaurant, we'd go down there for dinner all the time. But then it became.
Oh, did we?
Then it became.
Did Redo know this? Keeper of the Amex?
This was First Boston, which explains why First Boston's not there anymore. Probably because they're letting people like me go down there and.
UBS is placarded all over the place there. They have
own
6 buildings.
They own it. They own Zurich, Geneva. They're all over the place.
There's gnomes in the building.
Yep.
Sean Simmons, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And the important comments on Baruch College of New York City. Futures -11, Dow futures -103. The VIX it elevates 16.55. I'm watching oil. We're just not getting to 70. We've pulled back. Brent 67.39 and gold -12, 38.43. Veronica Clark said it for Citigroup. Jobs Day with a shutdown is in question. We'll be here for the shutdown.
Yep.
Nathan Dean with an important brief in the 9 o'clock hour as well. On YouTube, subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts from your office at home. Thank you for your support. Bloomberg Surveillance.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com,
잠시 후
Bloomberg
개장
Television,
브리핑
and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business
금요일
Flash.
주요 일정 및
And it's Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by IBKR. Will the U.S. Consumer Sentiment
뉴스.
Index exceed 60 in October 2025? Well, at IBKR forecast trader, the yes, recently at 33%. Start predicting today at ibkr.com/forecast. The last trading day for this contract
자,
is
AI 개장
October
브리핑 진행하도록
24th.
하겠습니다.
So
AI
will
개장
government
브리핑
shutdown
이후에
affect the jobs data on
장전
Friday? The
뉴스
BLS says
속보
yes, so we
확인은
shall
금요일
wait
주요
and see.
일정
Today, though, we're going to get the JOLTS job openings, a read on consumer confidence from the conference
확인해보도록
board. That's at
하겠습니다.
10 a.m. Wall Street time. Now, ahead of it, we have NASDAQ futures down 0.1%. Same for S&P futures. Dow futures, they're down at about 2%. On the yield space, we have yields little change. The 2-year at 3.61%. The 10-year at 4%.
9월 29일 장마감 브리핑 시작하겠습니다. 오늘 시장의 가장 큰 두 가지 키워드를 꼽으라면 사상 최대 규모의 인수합병 소식과 미국 정부의 셧다운 우려, 이 두 가지가 아닐까 싶습니다. 먼저 가장 큰 뉴스부터 짚어주시죠. 일렉트로닉 아츠에 무슨 일이 있었던 겁니까?
네, 오늘 시장의 주인공은 단연 비디오 게임 대기업 일렉트로닉 아츠였습니다. 사우디아라비아의 국부펀드 PIF와 사모펀드 실버레이크가 주도하는 컨소시엄에 무려 550억 달러, 우리 돈 약 75조 원에 인수된다는 소식이 전해졌습니다. 주당 인수 가격은 210달러로 인수설이 나오기 전 종계 25%의 프리미엄이 붙은 가격입니다.
550억 달러면 역사상 가장 큰 규모의 차입 매수 LBO 아닌가요? 이 거래가 시장에 던지는 의미는 무엇입니까?
맞습니다. 역대 최대 규모의 LBO 기록을 새로 쓰는 겁니다. 이 거래는 두 가지 중요한 점을 시사합니다. 첫째, 사우디아라비아가 석유 의존도를 낮추고 게임 산업의 허브로 거듭나려는 야심을 명확히 보여준 겁니다. PIF는 이미 닌텐도 지분을 확보하는 등 게임 산업에 막대한 투자를 해왔는데 이번 인수로 단숨에 글로벌 게임 시장의 핵심 플레이어로 부상했습니다. 둘째, 금리 인상으로 주춤했던 대규모 M&A 시장이 다시 활기를 띨 수 있다는 신호탄으로 해석됩니다. JP모건 체이스가 단독으로 200억 달러의 인수금융을 제공하기로 한 점도 주목할 만합니다. 이는 민간 신용시장에 도전을 받던 대형 은행들이 다시금 M&A 시장의 주도권을 쥐려는 움직임으로 볼 수 있습니다. 시장의 유동성과 위험 선호 심리가 일정 부분 회복되었음을 보여주는 상징적인 사건입니다.
거대한 M&A 소식과는 정반대로 시장의 발목을 잡은 악재도 있었습니다. 바로 미국 연방정부 셧다운 우려인데요. 현재 상황이 어떻습니까?
네, 현지 시간으로 화요일 자정까지 임시 예산안이 통과되지 않으면 수요일부터 연방정부는 셧다운에 들어갑니다. 현재 공화당과 민주당의 협상이 난항을 겪고 있어 셧다운 가능성이 매우 높은 상황입니다. 투자자들이 가장 우려하는 것은 경제 데이터 발표 중단입니다. 당장 이번 주 금요일에 발표될 예정이었던 비농업 고용보고서부터 지연될 수 있습니다.
연준이 데이터 의존적인 통화 정책을 강조해왔는데 데이터가 나오지 않는다면 시장의 불확실성이 커질 수밖에 없겠군요.
정확합니다. 연준의 10월 금리 결정을 앞두고 가장 중요한 지표 중 하나가 사라지는 셈입니다. 시장은 이미 10월 금리 인하 가능성을 높게 보고 있지만 데이터 없이는 연준의 결정을 예측하기가 더욱 어려워집니다. 이런 불확실성은 투자 심리를 위축시키고 변동성을 키우는 요인입니다. 월스트리트에서는 투자자들이 대안 데이터를 찾거나 일단 방어적인 포지션으로 돌아설 수 있다는 분석이 나오고 있습니다.
이런 불안감을 증폭시키는 소식이 또 있었습니다. 트럼프 대통령의 관세 정책인데요. 이번엔 영화 산업을 겨냥했군요.
네, 트럼프 대통령이 소셜미디어를 통해 미국 밖에서 제작된 모든 영화에 100%를 부과하겠다고 발표했습니다. 가구 수입품에 대해서도 최대 50%의 관세를 예고했고요. 이는 보호무역주의 기조를 문화산업까지 확대하겠다는 신호로 할리우드의 글로벌 비즈니스 모델 자체를 흔들 수 있는 조치입니다. 넷플릭스나 워너브라더스 디스커버리 같은 기업들의 주가에 즉각적인 부담으로 작용했습니다.
정부 셧다운 우려에 새로운 관세 위협까지 거시경제의 불확실성이 커지면서 안전자산 선호 심리가 강해졌을 것 같습니다. 금 가격이 오늘 심상치 않았다고요?
네, 금 가격이 사상 처음으로 온스당 3,800달러를 돌파하며 역대 최고치를 경신했습니다. 현물 금은 장중 한때 3,831달러까지 치솟았습니다. 말씀하신 대로 정부 셧다운 우려, 지정학적 불안, 그리고 연준의 금리 인하 기대감이 복합적으로 작용하며 안전자산인 금으로 자금이 몰린 결과입니다. 금은 올해 들어서만 45%나 급등했습니다. 달러 약세도 금 가격 상승에 한몫했습니다.
이런 상황에서 투자자라면 안전자산 비중을 늘리는 게 맞을까요? 아니면 변동성 속에서 기회를 찾아야 할까요? 청취자 여러분은 어떻게 생각하시는지 궁금하네요. 한편 이런 거시적 불안감과는 별개로 특정 섹터는 뜨거운 하루를 보냈습니다. 바로 대마초 관련주들인데요. 어떤 배경이 있었습니까?
트럼프 대통령이 주말 사이 자신의 소셜미디어에 칸나비디올 CBD의 건강상 이점을 시사하는 동영상을 공유한 것이 발단이 됐습니다. 해당 영상은 CBD가 노인 의료 서비스에 혁명을 일으킬 수 있다는 내용을 담고 있습니다. 이 소식에 틸레이 브랜드 주가는 50% 이상 폭등했고 캐노피 그로스 등 다른 대마초 관련주들도 20% 넘게 급등했습니다. 대마초 재분류 가능성과 세금 부담 완화에 대한 기대감이 한꺼번에 몰린 영향입니다.
정책 변화 기대감 하나가 섹터 전체를 움직였군요. AI 업계에서도 주목할 만한 소식이 있었습니다. 화웨이와 엔트로픽 두 회사의 움직임을 짚어주시죠.
먼저 중국의 화웨이는 최첨단 AI 칩 생산량을 2배로 늘릴 계획이라고 밝혔습니다. 이는 미국의 제재에도 불구하고 AI 칩 시장에서 엔비디아에 도전하겠다라는 의지를 분명히 한 것으로 AI 반도체 시장의 경쟁이 더욱 치열해질 것을 예고합니다. 한편 구글과 아마존의 지원을 받는 AI 스타트업 엔트로픽은 새로운 AI 모델 클로드 4.5를 출시했습니다. 특히 금융, 과학 분야의 추론 능력을 강화하고 더 오랜 시간 동안 자율적으로 코딩 작업을 수행할 수 있는 등 기업 고객을 겨냥한 성능 개선에 초점을 맞췄습니다. AI 기술이 범용적인 수준을 넘어 특정 산업 분야에 맞춰 고도화되는 흐름을 보여주는 사례입니다.
실적 발표 시즌은 마무리 국면이지만 오늘 주목할 만한 기업이 있었습니다. 크루즈 여행사 카니발 코퍼레이션 실적은 어떻게 나왔나요?
네, 카니발은 시장의 예상을 뛰어넘는 호실적을 발표했습니다. 3분기 조정 주당순이익 EPS는 1.43달러로 예상치였던 1.32달러를 웃돌았고 매출 역시 81억 5천만 달러로 예상치 80억 9천만 달러를 상회했습니다. 강력한 크루즈 수요와 함께 선상에서의 소비 지출이 늘어난 덕분입니다. 이를 바탕으로 연간 수익 전망치도 상향 조정하면서 주가도 긍정적인 반응을 보였습니다.
그 외에 눈에 띄는 개별 기업 소식들이 있다면 짧게 정리해 주시죠.
몇 가지 상반된 소식이 있었습니다. 식물성 대체육 기업 비욘드 미트는 부채 해결을 위한 전환사채 교환 제한을 발표한 후 주가가 30% 넘게 폭락하며 사상 최저치를 기록했습니다. 반면 온라인 증권사 로빈후드는 예측 시장 거래가 급증했다는 소식에 주가가 12% 상승하며 사상 최고치를 경신했습니다. 투자은행 제프리스는 기록적인 자문 수수료 덕분에 예상을 뛰어넘는 분기 실적을 발표하며 M&A 시장 회복에 대한 기대감을 더했습니다.
정리해보면 오늘은 사상 최대 규모의 M&A라는 긍정적 소식과 정부 셧다운이라는 거시적 악재가 충돌한 하루였습니다. 오늘의 핵심과 다음 주 관전 포인트를 짚어주시죠.
오늘의 핵심은 두 가지입니다. 첫째, 일렉트로닉 아츠 인수 건에서 보듯 시장의 큰 손들은 여전히 매력적인 매물을 찾아 움직이고 있다는 점. 둘째, 그럼에도 불구하고 미국 정부 셧다운과 관세 정책 같은 정치적 불확실성이 언제든 시장 전체를 흔들 수 있는 가장 큰 변수라는 점입니다. 금 가격의 사상 최고치 경신은 이러한 불안 심리를 명확하게 보여줍니다.
그렇다면 당장 우리가 지켜봐야 할 변수는 무엇일까요?
단기적으로는 현지 시간 화요일 자정, 즉 셧다운 시한까지 예산안 협상이 타결되는지 여부가 가장 중요합니다. 셧다운이 현실화된다면 얼마나 길어질지, 그리고 주요 경제지표 발표가 실제로 얼마나 지연될지가 시장의 방향을 결정할 겁니다. 투자자들은 당분간 개별 기업의 펀더멘털과 함께 워싱턴의 정치적 상황에 촉각을 곤두세워야 할 것입니다.
장마감 브리핑 오늘 순서는 여기까지입니다. 내일 다시 뵙겠습니다.
자, 여기서 AI 개장 브리핑 마무리하고 금일 장전 나온 몇 가지 뉴스 살펴보고 주요 일정 살펴보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 첫 번째로 관세 관련 트럼프 대통령의 소셜미디어 내용 한번 살펴보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 트럼프 대통령이 해외에서 제작되는 모든 영화에 100% 관세를 부과하겠다 발표한 바가 있습니다. 자, 미국 영화 산업을 보호하기 위해 미국 밖에서 제작되는 모든 영화에 100%의 관세를 부과하겠다고 발표했고요. 트럼프 대통령은 다른 나라에 미국의 영화 제작 사업을 훔쳐갔다고 주장하며 특히 캘리포니아가 큰 타격을 입었다고 언급한 바가 있습니다. 자, 그리고 연준의 무살렘 총재 연설 관련이고요. 향후 추가적인 금리 인하 가능성이 열려 있다고 시사한 바가 있습니다. 자, 세인트루이스 연은 무살렘 총재는 향후 추가적인 금리 인하 가능성이 열려 있다고 밝혔고요. 하지만 그는 인플레이션이 여전히 연준의 목표치를 웃돌고 있어서 신중하게 움직여야 한다고 강조한 바가 있습니다. 자, 현재 통화정책은 약간 긴축적과 중립 사이에 있으며 앞으로 정책이 과도하게 완화적이 될 수 있는 지점까지 여지가 제한적이라고 지적한 바가 있습니다. 자, 그리고 트럼프 대통령이 자국 제조업 보호 명분으로 목재 및 제재목 수입품의 10%, 주방, 수납장, 세면대, 캐비닛, 천을 씌운 목재 기구 등에는 최대 50% 관세를 부과하겠다고 발표한 바가 있습니다. 자, 이번 조치는 2025년 10월 14일부터 바로 시행되며 일부 품목은 2026년 1월부터 관세가 추가적으로 더 오를 예정이라고 확인이 되고 있고요. 자, 이번 결정은 상무부의 수입조사 이후 내려진 것이며 무역 확장법 232조의 근거에 국가 안보를 명분으로 시행된다고 합니다. 그 셧다운 관련해가지고 몇 가지 살펴보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 미국 연방정부의 셧다운이 현실화될 경우 연준의 금리 결정의 핵심적인 9월 고용보고서를 포함한 주요 경제 지표 발표가 전면 중단된다고 합니다. 자, 셧다운이 장기화되면 3분기 GDP와 소비물가지수 CPI 발표마저 불투명해져 은퇴자 연금 인상률 결정에도 차질이 예상이 되고 있고요. 결과적으로 이번 셧다운은 시장의 데이터 공백을 초래해 경제 예측에 영향을 줄 뿐이 아니라 미국 경제 데이터의 신뢰성에 대한 근본적인 우려를 더욱더 증폭시키고 있습니다. 자, 이러한 사태는 수년간의 예산 부족과 인력 감축으로 이미 데이터 품질이 저하 논란이 커지던 상황에서 발생했으며 노동 통계국에서도 셧다운이 데이터 품질을 더욱더 악화시킬 수 있다고 경고하고 있습니다. 자, 그리고 연준 관련이고요. 제퍼슨 부의장이 고용, 물가 모두 불확실성이 확대된다고 언급한 바가 있습니다. 자, 제퍼슨 연준 부의장이 고용 둔화와 인플레이션 압력 상승이라는 상층된 위험에 동시에 직면해 있어 향후 통화정책 경로가 매우 복잡하고 불확실하다고 진단한 바가 있습니다. 자, 그는 현재 경제 상황을 고용 리스크는 하방으로, 인플레이션 리스크는 상방으로 기울어졌다고 평가하며 연준의 양대 책무 모두 압박을 받고 있음을 시사했습니다. 자, 특히 최근 실업률이 4.3%까지 상승한 것을 노동시장이 스트레스를 받기 시작한 신호로 보고 이를 완화하기 위해 지난 9월 금리 인하를 지지했다고 밝힌 바가 있고요. 향후 전망에 대해서는 올해 단기적으로 실업률이 소폭 더 상승할 수 있으나 내년부터는 다시 안정세를 찾고 인플레이션 역시 수년 내에 목표치인 2%대로 복귀할 것이라는 기존 전망을 유지하고 있습니다. 자, 향후 금리 결정에 대해서는 구체적인 언급을 피하며 앞으로 발표되는 데이터, 경제 전망, 리스크 균형 등을 종합적으로 평가해 신중하게 결정하겠다는 원론적인 입장을 유지하고 있습니다. 자, 유가 관련해서는 이제 과잉 공급 우려에 하락했다는 소식이 확인되고 있습니다. 자, 유가는 오펙의 추가 증상 가능성과 이라크, 쿠르디스탄 지역의 원유 수출 재개 소식에 하락했다는 소식이 확인되고 있고요. 또한 미국 연방정부의 셧다운 가능성이 제기되면서 세계 최대 소비국인 미국의 원유 수요 감소할 수 있다는 우려가 커지고 있다고 판단되어 유가가 하락세에 빠지게 되었습니다. 자, 여기까지 장전 뉴스 몇 가지 살펴보았고요. 금일 주요 일정 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 9시 55분 미국 존슨 레드북 소매 판매 지수 발표가 예정되어 있고요. 그리고 10시에 7월 주택 가격 지수 발표가 예정되어 있습니다. 자, 그리고 10시 45분에 9월 시카고 연은 PMI 발표가 되고요. 11시에 8월 졸트 구인 인원, 그리고 11시 동일한 11시 9월 컨퍼런스 보드 소비자 신뢰 지수 발표가 됩니다. 자, 연설은 연준의 콜린스 총재 연설 10시에 예정되어 있고요. 그리고 자정 이후 2시 30분 연준의 굴스비 총재 연설이 예정되어 있습니다. 자, 백악관 일정으로는 10시에 트럼프 대통령 국방부 연설이 예정되어 있고요. 그리고 자정 12시에 트럼프 대통령의 발표 예정이 있습니다. 정확히 어떤 발표인지도 확인되고 있지 않습니다. 발표 예정이 있고요. 자, 그리고 자정 이후 4시에 트럼프 대통령 행정명령 사명 예정되어 있습니다. 자, 금일 집중해서 볼만한 지표 11시 졸트 구인 인원과 9월 컨퍼런스 소비자 신뢰지수 집중해서 확인하시면 될 것 같습니다. 자, 여기까지 개장 브리핑 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 잠시 후 21시 20분부터 나스닥 정규 트레이딩 이어나가도록 하겠습니다.
Uncertainty over tariffs. So things are starting to change. People starting to do some deals. The biggest one, remember Union Pacific, that $85 billion takeover of Norfolk Southern. But the big breakups too, like remember Kraft Heinz, Keurig Dr. Pepper.
Yep.
So it's kind of all this background.
And this is what people kind of thought when President Trump was elected, that maybe there'd be more deal activity, less regulatory scrutiny, more deals happening. So maybe this is what we're getting.
Yeah, because I remember they were also, it put a pause on IPOs for a bit, with tariffs and all that uncertainty. But things are picking up.
We're back, baby.
Yes, I know you love that.
Yes.
Okay, this is some advice from Bill Nye the Science Guy, okay? Who doesn't love Bill Nye the Science Guy, okay? How to keep your brain healthy. Okay, here's what you have to do, because this is what he does.
Okay.
He's 69 years old. He talked about it. Crossword puzzles. There you go.
I do that every day.
You do. You see. You do your.
Day.
No. What's the word? What's the word?
I do it all. I do
This
the
is
whole
a debate
New
at
York
home.
Times thing.
Crossword puzzles helpful.
I've been doing it since I was like 10 years old.
Are you good? I've
Every
never
day.
completed. I'm
Every day.
useless.
Every day.
Do you get better at it?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
See,
Yeah.
crossword. My mom
So I
loves the
ripped right
Sudoku.
through it until Friday, then I hit a wall because Friday's tough.
Dude, what else does Mr. Nice say?
Okay, so he also does little things to keep his brain, like designing, making model trains, physical activity. Do you know he bikes 3 times a week and he swing dances?
Nice.
He says that is a big thing that keeps him kind of active.
All right.
And learning new things. That's all about keeping that, the brain in check. But
Very
he
good.
is busy. Bill Nye the Science Guy. Gotta love him.
I love that guy.
Very good. Lisa Mateo, thank you so much. It's the newspapers as well. Reading about this now, I've got the Secretary of War, as it's listed by the administration will speak at 8:15, which is in 15 minutes. So we'll have to see on that. That's the schedule. Thank you, ABC, for that. This is 838 general officers, 446 of them higher 2-star, 3-star, 4-star ranks. We'll give you those images here as we can on YouTube. They're not going to be playing Sweet Caroline at Yankee Stadium. I thought I would slip it in for the Fenway faithful. Good morning.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Very important headlines out, and they move the market.
How do you think the Fed is assessing what's happening with these tariffs?
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
The economic calendar jam-packed today.
And Michael Barr with news.
President Trump is questioning Russian leader Vladimir Putin's actions.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney, Tom Keene, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. Yes, we'll be doing stock movers later in the hour. Someone emailed in, please do stock movers. Has there been a selection yet, Lisa?
I'm
One
almost
selection?
there. Yes.
You have no
I
selections.
definitely had to have EchoStar in there. Yes.
EchoStar will be in there to keep Sweeney happy. The
Yes.
constituency she has to face.
I know.
Extraordinary. We say good morning to you. It's an odd day. The tape is like an FOMC day. Before the shutdown, we're learning from Veronica Clark at Citigroup. We may not get a jobs report on Friday. Small detail. I got a quiet tape. Futures negative 12. The VIX 16.60. Paul, gold elevated. It just won't go down.
It won't go down, Tom. But gold at $3,800 an ounce. It's just been a moonshot. And a lot of folks are saying it's not just the central banks buying it. I mean, there's buying across the board.
Rockstar darkening the door today. Suki Cooper.
Oh,
Standard
really?
Charter.
Solid.
The real deal. We'll have to
that.
see on that. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. We're brought to you by Certified Financial Planner Professionals, the standard in financial planning. Find your CFP professional at letsmakeaplan.org. And we thank the CFP organization for their support, doing so much across America, on particularly on retirement things. I just watched a video of a CFP out on YouTube about RMD, retirement required distributions or something.
Oh, boy.
I learned a lot.
Okay.
I was ignorant. And, that's what the CFP does. We thank them for their support this morning. From the Interactive Broker Studios, the Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
Yeah, we've got thoughts of a government shutdown. Stocks lower. We have the dollar slipping. Gold's record-breaking rally, kind of taking a breather right now. We'll start with futures. NASDAQ futures down 0.1%. Same for S&P futures. Dow futures down 0.2%. Let's go to the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index. That's down about 0.1%. Over to gold, we have COMEX Gold down 0.3%, $3,842 an ounce. In the yield space, the 2-year 3.61%. That's down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 4.13%, and that's down 1 basis point. A lot of companies making news. We'll start with Exxon and their plans to cut about 2,000 jobs. That's about 3 to 4% of its global workforce. It's part of their long-term restructuring plan. And then the Wall Street Journal reporting Boeing started work on a next-generation single-aisle aircraft, could eventually replace the 737 MAX. And yes, we mentioned it. EchoStar up 8%. Verizon Communications said to be in talks with the company about purchasing some of its wireless spectrum. We'll have more on that in Stock Movers coming up at 8:55 a.m. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Selling it forward. Lisa Mateo, thank you so much for that. It's unfair to David Seif. He's the chief economist for all developed markets at Nomura, and we're supposed to go, what's nominal GDP look like? What is the first derivative of consumption? No, we got to talk to him about, he was at Harvard with Governor Myron, and today a blistering article by the wonderful Tom Orlick at Bloomberg about R-Start. Professor Seif, let's start with what is R-Start?
Well, good morning. So R-Start is the real rate, so not counting inflation, that would be neither expansionary or contractionary to the economy.
How many plugins are in your calculation of R-Start? How many guesses?
How many guesses? There are a lot of things that would go into it, but there are a couple of things that are by far the most important.
Please.
Population growth being one of them, and rates of national savings being another very important aspect of it.
There's a huge disagreement on this. Discuss how you approach it at Nomura. Is our R-star coming down back to what we remember pre-COVID, or do we establish a new R-star at a higher interest rate?
Well, so I think the biggest thing when it comes to R-star has really been a 40 to 45-year trend, which has been a slow and steady decline.
The great moderation.
Yes, and that's more than anything else, I would say, due to slowing population growth. It's been happening around the world, and the places where the neutral rate is the lowest and has been for decades are places like Japan, where the population growth has been the weakest. So that is a very slow-moving force, but one that probably over the course of decades is the single most important one out there. And so I think that what happened after Lehman in the Great Recession was that we, because of the overhang from that, R-star really fell below what was the declining trend. And then COVID happened, and it was, for various reasons, the opposite. It jumped up to above what was its longer run trend. And now I think we are certainly heading back towards that longer run trend. Now, what Governor Myron has proposed certainly is controversial in terms of some of the inputs he's put in and therefore the conclusions he's come out with. But I think that it's probably more people than not would agree that it has fallen or is falling in the post-COVID era and may continue to fall further.
Boy, did he hedge that?
Well,
that was like a lawyer.
He knows what he's doing.
Busted his job.
So, David, the Fed has cut 25 basis points. How do you think they're going to proceed? What do you think the cadence is going to be of their kind of rate moves going forward?
Yeah, we have no reason to doubt the dot plot for the rest of the Powell's time in office. So, especially for the rest of this year. So we think that they'll cut in October. And frankly, how could they not, given that it looks like they're not going to necessarily have all the data they would? December, we also think they will cut again. So it's not necessarily something we think is completely necessary to do, but they've put it out there that that's what they're going to do, despite the fact that they upgraded economic projections. And so hard to see them being knocked off of that, especially with probably less data than normal, or maybe no data coming out. And then we expect they'll cut once more under Powell in March. Then we think that post-Powell, there are probably another couple cuts coming. And that's really more of a matter of the next Fed chair, whoever it is probably going to be much more dovish than Powell and at least receive some deference from the rest of the committee.
All right. Looks like our government may shut down at midnight tonight. As an economist, do you care?
Well, we certainly care for doing our jobs. I mean, this is where we this is what we do is we analyze government data. So it's going to be a little bit of a famine at first and then feast as the data eventually come out later and there's catch up. But in terms of the real economy, probably not so much. There will probably be a small hit to GDP from the lack of work going on in Q3 or Q4, I guess, because we're starting Q4 tomorrow. Yep. But then we would expect there to be almost one-for-one catch-up growth once the government reopens, so Q1, Q2 of next year. I think that it's particularly important in that the lack of data coming out right as the Fed has tacked dovishly does make it, as I said, more difficult for them to deviate from that, because what would be the justification for doing so? So it may lead to monetary policy outcomes that once we then get the data, we're like, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't have done that. But for the real economy as a whole, it's hard to see this being such a huge deal.
It seems like the consumer out there is in pretty solid shape here. How do you think about the U.S. consumer and 70% of this economy?
Yeah, we see the consumer as pretty strong, and we had an upside surprise a couple weeks ago to retail sales. And generally speaking, we've seen over a year of strength in retail sales. And that really, we think, reflects the fact that although there aren't a lot of hires going on, there really are very, very low levels of layoffs going on in the economy. So the vibe may be one that the economy isn't that great, although even that is starting to change. But the hard data are pretty clear.
But isn't it K-shaped, where the vibe is half the nation's flat on their backs, farmers screaming for aid from the president, soybeans, Brazil, all that, we know the drill. And the other people are packed in restaurants Paul goes to that Lisa and I can't afford.
It's not necessarily an unfair characterization. The key thing, though, is that as long as the people who are currently spending money continue to feel good, they're going to continue to spend money. If people who are new entrants into the labor market are having more trouble than normal finding a job, and
Right.
there is some of that, that's a real social issue, but it's not necessarily going to hurt the economic data over the short run, and that's what we're seeing.
David C. for this with Nomura. We continue, the chief economist for developed markets at Nomura. We welcome all of you across the nation and on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcast, growing each and every day. In Quantico, down the Potomac River towards the Chesapeake. At Quantico, the Marine Corps base, Quantico is the official title. The FBI Academy is there as well. The Secretary of War, Mr. Hegsis, will speak, and then the President of the United States will speak as well. We're scheduling the President in the 9 o'clock hour. We'll have to see on that. We have someone just moving to the podium right now with 19 flags. Perplexity to the rescue.
Okay.
19 flags. The 6th Armed Services, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, the Department of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I don't know if it's the Department of War now. I don't know. This is maybe outdated. The Major Unified Combatant Commands.
Nice.
Stravitas would know all those.
Yep.
The POW, MIA, or service-related commemorative flags, among many assembled on stage. I counted 19, maybe it's 20, I don't know. We'll have to see on that. Again, David C. for this with Nomura. I go back to nominal GDP, to Paul's observation, the restaurants are packed. Is the consumer harmed by higher inflation, or is it circuitous where it feeds on itself to keep the machine going?
So, at the end of the day, inflation does hurt a little bit, and sometimes wages do take a little longer to catch up. On the other side of the coin, though, it tends to be a windfall for some businesses when you have a burst in inflation. And so there are distributional effects, certainly, from this happening. But it's not a situation where we think it's going to be bad for asset markets, certainly not bad for equities. Usually a burst of inflation, at least in the short run, can actually be quite helpful to companies that can raise their prices faster than their costs rise.
Tariffs, that's all we talked about the first 6 months of the year. How are you guys thinking about that these days? Are they impacting this economy at all?
Well, we think they had an impact on the economy, but certainly they did not cause the recession that many people had feared.
Okay.
Was there a bit of a slowdown compared to what there may have been? Hard to know exactly what the counterfactual is, but probably yes. We did definitely see some disruptions. We also think there is a real risk that not all of the inflation from the tariffs has come out. So it would only be fair to say that there have been no clear signs, no robust signs of tariff-induced inflation so far. We see inflation too high still, or above target, but it's not due to inflation.
So the issue here is it may be delayed. It may not be really felt through the economy too much.
Well, we think it is still there to be. It's still something that's going to come out slowly over the next few months. It's part of the reason that maybe the Fed should be cutting rates a little bit slower, than it is. But it's not something that is leading to the burst of inflation that many had expected right now.
David C., thank you so much with Nomura. Greatly
My pleasure.
Appreciated this morning. There is a meeting at Quantico, and it is about, among other things, where we've had many wars in the recent years, the Middle East. With authority, we speak with Jana Brasacci, Bloomberg Horizons, out of Dubai as well. Jumana, how will the leadership of the assembled Middle East, from Morocco to Persia, how they perceive the military meetings that we see at Quantico?
I didn't hear the rest of your question, Tom, but what I did hear is how are the Middle East likely to respond? If that is your question, then they have already put out a note this morning. So the foreign ministries of all of the major Gulf allies, U.S. Gulf allies in the region, including Qatar, Turkey, the UAE, which obviously is one of the signatory of the Abraham Accords, put out a comment in support of the Gaza peace plan that was unveiled yesterday evening. And it is significant because all of these countries are saying that they want to work with the U.S., they want to push forward with this proposal. The ultimate aim, obviously, is to end the war in Gaza. That is the immediate aim, to release the hostages, to distribute humanitarian aid to the people who need it the most, and then also to work on a plan post-war. And a lot of that was unveiled in this 20-point peace plan yesterday, but I will say we are still waiting to hear a response from Hamas. They say that they've only received a version of the proposal last night. Qatar is saying that they have pledged to review it in good faith, and we should be getting a response within the 24 hours from Hamas. But for them, of course, this is a fight for existential survival. But because the Arab comments are so supportive of this deal, then perhaps there is a glimmer of hope that this time around they might sign on to it.
This is almost like a movie, Paul, to have this gathering of generals and admirals at the same time with the seriousness that Jumana's talking about.
Exactly. Jumana, what's our understanding of Hamas right now? As are they able to negotiate directly? Oh, I think we lost Jumana there. So from the Middle East there. But so the question becomes, Tom, we've got the plan from President Trump and President Netanyahu, but is Hamas able to negotiate and represent the people of Gaza and actually get some deal done?
I thought the British press did a great job at midnight on this, and the convolution of 5 and 10 and 20 points.
Yep.
What I don't know is if Hamas disagrees on 1 point, what happens?
Yep.
I don't understand that. We'll have to see. And we thank you, Jumana Brzezinski, for joining us from Bloomberg Horizons. Let's get right to it. A busy day with our news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much. Soon, President Trump will join Secretary Hegseth and top military brass for a quickly called all-hands meeting in Quantico, Virginia. In fact, Hegseth is at the podium right now. Retired Army Colonel Jeff McCausland says he has never heard of such a get-together in his 50-plus years in the military.
It remains to be seen to me whether or not some of these general officers, because they'll be here over that particular magic date of 1 October, might end up being stranded in the United States if there's a government shutdown, if in fact that affects their travel to go home.
Retired Colonel McCausland says it's a security nightmare at Quantico. The president is focusing on a ceasefire also between Israel and Hamas. Both President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say they have agreed to a 20-point plan to end the war in Gaza. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
President Trump says his administration's 20-point plan will end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already agreed to it.
I also want to thank Prime Minister Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years, decades, even centuries.
Netanyahu says the deal will be done one way or another.
This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
Now, if both parties accept this 20-point plan, it would end the conflict immediately, and all hostages, living and dead, will be returned. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Vice President J.D. Vance says that he believes the U.S. government is on track to shut down. Vance is blaming Democrats. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said there are still large differences between the two sides, but suggested Democrats could settle for some of their priorities, such as extending subsidies for Affordable Care Act premiums. Global news 24 hours a day, and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene in New York City. We observe a moment of history for the United States of America. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is speaking at Quantico. I want to paint the picture for a radio audience. A rigid American flag, very large behind, very a la Patton in the movie, I would suggest.
Yes. Yep.
And with a logo at the bottom, which I believe says
자, 1차 진입뷰 대기하도록 하겠습니다. 나스닥 1차
And what's unusual here
진입뷰
for me is
대기하도록
the Secretary of
하겠습니다.
Defense was at the lectern, and then he walked out in front like it was an Apple launch date, you know, like a TED speech. He's
자,
walking
운용 계약수 3계약
casually on
운영하도록 하겠습니다.
stage,
계약수는
his
3계약
left hand in his
운영하도록
pocket,
하겠습니다.
speaking to the assembled from ABC over 300 generals in tow right now. Paul, your thoughts on this moment?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've, we don't get these generals together in Washington, D.C. at one point. We've heard that from a lot of the reporting around. But Mr. Hegseth is speaking, Secretary Hegseth, and then President Trump will speak as well. So this is a big deal in Washington, D.C. for the Pentagon
We're
and
going to
the
take
leadership.
we're going to take President Trump here. We believe in the 9 o'clock hour. Call it in 40 minutes. Secretary of Defense Hegseth is starting right on time at the 15-minute mark of this 8 o'clock hour on the East Coast. I really want to emphasize how unusual this is. The Washington Post today, I don't have it up in front of me, I'm so sorry for that, with a detailed article of sources and all that, of the different tensions in developing the long-term security plan as well. I would suggest the markets ignore this moment in our international relations and American politics.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't seem like it. So we've got the markets looking here just a little bit softer here, Tom, this morning. Just the S&P off 12 points, the Dow off 90 points, and the NASDAQ off 37 points. The VIX sitting right around 16.5 right here. So pretty quiescent market out there. The bond market also pretty steady here, Tom. The 10-year Treasury pretty much unchanged here today, about 4.13%.
I look at secretaries of war, and then in the change in the late 1940s, back to defense ball, and I can honestly say I've never thought about any of the Secretary of Defenses we grew up with stepping out from behind the lectern to casually speak to 1 and 2 and 5-star
That's got to be a tough audience to address. You got all these.
They're all dressed the same for starters.
Exactly, and they're all, generals and admirals and so on across the military. That's a tough crowd to speak to. When they, I guess, Mr. Hegseth is a former military, so he has obviously the respect for the rank. But boy, that's got to be a tough crowd.
We have a jewel for you in the next hour. Nathan Dean will join us. He is expert on our affairs in Washington. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
자, 현재 1차 진입뷰 대기 중에 있습니다. 조금 더 지켜보고 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 나스닥 매도 진입 사인 드립니다. 자, 진입가 806.00입니다. 806.00 미사 806.00 매도 진입 사인 드립니다. 자, 매도 진입권 3계약 진입가 24,806 지켜보고 대응 이어나가도록 하겠습니다.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And this Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. For new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment, see if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Well, you got traders looking to a series of U.S. labor reports. They're due out this week to kind of gauge the Fed's next move, and that includes, yes, Friday's jobs report, but its release in question over thoughts of a government shutdown. We shall see. NASDAQ futures down 0.1%. So are Dow futures and S&P futures. In the yield space right now, the 2-year 3.60%. That's down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 4.12%, and that's down 1 basis point. We have COMEX gold down 0.3% at $3,841 an ounce. Brent crude down more than 1% at $67 a barrel. The competitive weight loss market, it has Novo Nordisk. Well, they're offering workers an ultimatum: accept a demotion or lose your job. It comes as the drug maker continues to lay off thousands of workers. And as more people working from home come back to the office, Bloomberg reporting their home offices are finding new lives. Yeah, they're using their spare rooms for an outdoor additions as Pilates studios, golf simulators, cigar lounges, hangout spaces for the kids, maybe a music studio. Tom, there you go. That's your Bloomberg Business Report.
Cigar lounges, that sort of rings true. You know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it coming back nationwide? Is it becoming more of an in-the-office bustle?
That's what they're saying. Yeah, that's why. They're changing their rooms.
We'll have to see. Lisa Mateo, thanks so much. Yes, folks, we're minutes away from stock movers. Secretary of Defense still speaking at Quantico. We'll continue to look for headlines from that. With us now, with decades of experience in the market, probably the most important voice this morning for those afeared, Phil Orlando joins us. He's Global Equity Strategist here at Federated Hermes. I look, Phil, at where we are. We've all been here before. We were all in the market in September of '87, and then October showed up. How do you advise people about the 10% correction or the 18% bear market or the worse than that we know it's out there somewhere? Then how do you participate?
First of all, thank you very much for having me back on the program. It's a real privilege. The equity market has had a phenomenal recovery here since the Liberation Day lows. Stocks up 38%. And we are in the midst of what is historically the most challenging part of the calendar, right? August, September, October. So given the fact that you've got forward multiples for the S&P at about 22 times earnings, which is rich, and benchmark 10-year Treasury yields a little over 4%, you could make the argument that, yeah, okay, we're due for a 5 or a 10% correction. But when you sort of go into the weeds and break the S&P down, you've got the Mag 7 names trading up around 30 times forward earnings. You've got the forgotten 493 trading in the upper teens, which, given the strength of the earnings growth, is a reasonable number. So our view is that, okay, you could have a little bit of an air pocket here, but the bulk of the move is that stocks longer term, in our view, up and to the right, and we're in the midst of what we think would be a rolling rotation, that maybe you've got a little bit of profit taking coming out of those Mag 7 names, but the beneficiaries should be the small cap names and the value names and the international names that have lagged badly, that have started over the last couple of quarters to stage a catch-up trade, and we think that trend has legs.
Earnings. We need earnings to come through.
총선은 재진입 사인드리도록 하겠습니다. 현재 진입권 손절 사인드리도록 하겠습니다. 손절하겠습니다. 손절 후에 재진입 사인드리도록 하겠습니다.
To your point, second quarter revenues up 6% year over year, earnings up 12% year over year, both stronger than expected. The expectations for the third quarter, which will start in a couple of weeks, revenues up about 6-7%. Earnings are going to be solidly double-digit. At Federated Hermes, we are actually in the process of reevaluating / moving higher our earnings estimates for the rest of this year, the rest of next year. We like the way fiscal policy is falling into place. Oh, and guess what? We're now cutting interest rates.
What does your reevaluation say about revenues given a nominal GDP, either good or bad or indifferent?
Well, that's a great question because our GDP estimate next year, 2.8% in the U.S.
Wow.
Blue chip consensus is 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
we're
okay, right there, folks. Stop the show. Even with Jobs Day on Friday, Orlando delivered the single most important statistic you need to know. The not the gloom crew, but well-intentioned, smart people are sub 2%, and you're again 2.8.
2.8. We're twice consensus.
This is Steve Auth's fault.
Exactly. Steve Auth is an amazing chief investment officer. Steve Cheverone, Damian McIntyre. We've got a great team.
You're on speaking terms with Cheverone.
We've got.
I didn't know that.
We share a wall.
Hey, Phil, talk to us about. You mentioned a little bit the Europe, and we had a kind of a non-U.S. trade or a light U.S. trade earlier this year. Was that just a trade to kind of rotate out of the U.S. or? You guys see something more than that?
We think it's got legs. You see, there are a couple of things going on. First of all, the valuation was obscenely out of line.
Yep.
The international stocks are 40% cheaper than domestic stocks. Typically, that discount is maybe 20%. The dividend yield on international stocks is about 2.9%.
Nice.
Dividend yield on the S&P is 1.2.
Yep.
So the valuation's there. The dollar has been weak. We think that's a trend that probably continues here. And foreign central banks have been more accommodative than our central banks
매수 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다.
stronger
매수 진입 사인
economic growth
드립니다.
and earnings growth. So we've had an overweight in international. EM is actually been sort of our favorite
그러니까
subcategory,
84.50입니다.
and
자,
that's done pretty well over
84.50.
the course of the last couple of months. So
자, 매수 진입권
we're sticking to our
대응이
guns
나가도록
here
하겠습니다. 자,
with international as an
84.50.
asset class that we think will
매수
work.
진입 사인 드렸습니다.
International. How about you talk about the MSCI? It's such a big part is China. How do you guys think about China as an opportunity? We've seen some of these Chinese names like Alibaba just finally come back to life this year.
Well, when I talked about our overweight to EM, that was code for saying that we had a really constructive view on China.
Okay.
That if you go back and look over the last 4 years or so, the U.S. market has done really, really well. China was just flat on its butt.
Yep.
I mean, it completely mismanaged the COVID situation and never caught a bid. It was inconceivable to us that from a policy standpoint, fiscal or monetary, China was going to allow that as the second largest economy in the world to continue. That there had to be some corrective action, and then ultimately that would be reflected in equity valuations. And certainly over the last couple of months, the market is starting to get that memo. Chinese stocks are starting to work.
Phil Orlando with us. We're going to continue here right now. Let me say that Bloomberg surveillance this morning, we're brought to you by Commonwealth, with JOLTS coming up in the 10 a.m. hour. Commonwealth, supporting more than 2,000 independent financial advisors with a 2-to-1 advisor to staff ratio, small firm attentiveness, big advisor impact. Go to commonwealth.com to learn about their consultative support in technology. Does dollar cost averaging work anymore? I haven't heard that phrase, Phil, since you and I were younger.
Well, it certainly does, because, and I had we had a question internally just the other day that we've got a very bullish longer term view looking out over the next 18 months or so. And one of my colleagues said, I'm looking to put a boatload of money into my kid's college. Should I do it right now? And I said, okay, we've got, we think the market's going to be up 20% plus over the next 18 months, but we could have a 5 or 10% air pocket at any point. The government's about to shut down. Do we get the jobs numbers on Friday? There's any number of things that can happen. So the way to defend that is dollar cost averaging. If you're regularly putting money to work, we know that, or we believe that the longer trend is up and to the right.
Phil Orlando, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Let's do this more. We need to have him in more.
Well, he's in Manhattan.
We could have a joint Cheverone in Orlando. That would be too much.
Federated, all federated.
It'd be like goosebumps. Phil Orlando, thank you so much. I'm having so much fun. Like, Lisa, help me here. Merriam-Webster's coming out with a new dictionary, right?
Yes.
I got to buy it. It'll
words.
go on the coffee table, bright red cover, and they got new words and all that.
Yes.
I go look at the flags. You go in.
짧게 끊어가도록 하겠습니다. 자, 수익 청산 사인 드립니다. 짧게 끊어가도록 하겠습니다.
I'm having so much
자,
fun.
수익 청산 사인 드립니다.
of Defense speaking Paul trying to identify the like 19 flags behind him with the flag of the United States of America.
끊어가도록
And I
하겠습니다.
nailed it. I
주문 청산이
identified the flag of
완료되었습니다.
the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But there's one to the secretary's left.
자, 이어
which is
3차
teal like the San
진입뷰
Jose
대기하도록
Sharks.
하겠습니다.
And I
3차
can't figure out.
진입뷰 대기하도록
It's not the San
하겠습니다.
Jose Sharks.
Okay.
I know that for certain. But there's this really beautiful bright blue color. And I'm looking at,
I see
thank
what
you,
you're saying, yeah.
Wikipedia for this, for giving me like 400 flags. I haven't identified the space command.
No, I haven't. I didn't know that was still a thing, but it is.
Take a picture and send it to Perplexity.
I should. See, you know. The red is the Marine Corps
천천히
flag.
지켜보고
We know that.
사인 드리도록 하겠습니다.
Secretary is still speaking. The president will be with us in about 35 minutes, I'm guessing. They seem to be very punctual today. Phil Orlando lifts the market. We are negative 15, now negative 8 on the futures. Paul Streety and Tom Keene on YouTube. It's Bloomberg Surveillance.
자, 길게 지켜보고 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 조금 더 지켜보고 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. So will a government shutdown affect the jobs data Friday? The BLS, well, they say yes. So we're going to have to wait and see. Today we'll get JOLTS job openings, a read on consumer confidence. That's from the conference board at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. Now ahead of it, we have futures lower. Little movement right now on NASDAQ futures down about a point. Dow futures off about 40 points. S&P futures down about 4 points. The two-year yield 3.60%. That's down 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year 4.12%. And that's down 1 basis point. We have the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index down about 0.1%. To earnings we go. We'll start with Jefferies Financial Group. They posted their best fiscal third quarter revenue ever. Its shares are up nearly 1%. And shares of Vail Resorts, skiing down 2%. The company says fewer season passes were sold ahead of the upcoming ski season. Today we'll also hear from Paychex before the bell and Nike after the close. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Trade over 10,000 U.S. stocks and ETFs, U.S. equity index options, United States Treasuries, and more on your timetable. Learn more at ibkr.com/around the clock. So what we've got going, we've got the Secretary of Defense speaking at Quantico. President Trump is heading to Quantico. Does he take the helicopter or drive?
I was thinking.
He probably Sikorsky. They got a helicopter.
Well,
pad
Quantico,
there,
Quantico. You got to go across the river, I think.
He's outside the White House. We hope to have comments of the president from the White House before we have comments from the president at Quantico. In the meantime, we have a 2-hour interview with Eric Fine. He's portfolio manager, head of active emerging markets at Van Eck. I should mention Van Eck has been kind enough to support Bloomberg Surveillance and all the work we do. I don't care anything about it. I'm recruited for hockey. I'm a stud. And I get in the pool with a water polo team in Boulder, Colorado, which is a bunch of kids from Punahou in Hawaii. Eric, I've never been humbled more in my life. You were water polo at Duke. It's the hardest sport on the planet.
It's tough and great to see you. Thanks. And you got to tell me what that jacket means at some point.
This is Red Sox. Excuse me.
It's a famous sports team.
It's a sport team. Catch up.
I had a really interesting experience. Sometimes the basketball coach would have a basketball player play with the water polo team, but for fitness issues, right? And once the Gamecocks football team, the coach arranged for them to play with us, and that was an incredible experience. Don't get close is the main.
They'll tackle you underwater,
but then you just go under, and they aren't going to last.
Massive respect. I mean, folks, thanks. It is the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. Paul.
Exactly. Hey, Eric, we're talking about emerging markets here. We were just talking to Phil Orlando at Federated Hermes. He was talking of China. How do you guys think about China these days?
China's probably the most important thing for all markets, and it's deeply important for what I do, EM bonds. We wrote a piece recently on titled "The Curiously Unpopular Case for RMB Appreciation." If you remember the beginning of the year, almost everyone, was saying FX, EMFX, especially CNY, has to devalue, right? That was a consensus view, and it didn't happen. And it shouldn't have happened, and it's strengthened since November, and we think that's going to continue.
Why will it strengthen? This is important because Bank of International Settlements, you write, has a very strong statement that China needs to move. Why will it go under 7 yuan per dollar?
So I think it's going to be like watching paint dry. We can get into that later. But
we don't have later. It's morning drive time. Okay, continue.
CNY should revalue. You started it off perfectly, Tom. The BIS is already, they do a real effective exchange rate measure. Two trading partners compare their inflation rates, simple version. And it shows the CNY is 30% undervalued. It shows a similar, actually record high overvaluation for the U.S., which has different trading.
So then how do tariffs play into that? Because they want it to be undervalued to do exports and get more exports, whether to the U.S., to Mexico, soybeans, Brazil, and all that. They have a huge motivation to keep it here, right?
Absolutely. I'm really glad you raised the tariff question. But just on the BIS point, that's simple depreciation. It's cheap, and that's continuing. China's inflation is much lower than ours. And so, of course, the currency should appreciate, and that's not changing. Now, on your really excellent next step question, tariffs. Well, let's just think of the game theory in tariffs. You're having a negotiation, and there's a currency chapter in these negotiations. Now, they are not going to send emails to the media on these currency chapters, as we all know. Those are generally super secret. But the gist of them are going to be, you obviously cannot devalue your currency 20% the moment the negotiators leave. You probably have to keep it stable or revalue it. Interesting. Now, here's the game theory. What's their starting position? Up to their necks in dollars. Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, China, for sure, even South Africa, big parts of Europe are net international, have positive net international investment position with the US. They're up to their necks in dollars, and they're told the dollar is going to go down. So the game theory around tariffs is central. So that's why I'm glad that that came up, and that's exactly what's happening. Now, you don't necessarily sell your treasuries and your stocks, and that's trickier and takes longer to get evidence for that. But you can hedge. Deutsche had a great report on that. The FX hedging has happened. If you're Japanese, and you, I know we were talking about China, but just a simple example. We have twin deficits. We depend on offshore for a lot of our financing. If you're a Japanese buyer of JGBs or treasuries, and you own a treasury, a 10-year treasury, and hedge it into yen, which is the convention, you get 1/4 the yield of an outright JGB. And so these are reflows. China, we think the currency's revaluing. It itself is not going to be the financial winner from it in terms of what we do. It may be an economic winner, right? They're managing policy to optimize their lives, not mine. But yeah, China and the revaluation of the currency, I think, is a huge signal. And it's arguably the biggest thing going on for broader markets.
What else? I mean, what else outside of China gets your attention these days?
Everything in EM, because EM trades with China.
Okay.
And if the currency's appreciating, that's a huge tailwind.
Yep.
Moreover, these countries, EM in general, has low levels of debt, permitting central banks to be purely focused on inflation, and it worked, right? So this is, they have low debt, independent central banks, and no one owns it.
Eric, thank you so much. Eric Fine with us. We've got to cut it short for breaking news here. He is with Vanna Eck in Emerging Markets. Dad, please come back again. Thank you for your support of what we do here at Bloomberg Surveillance. I saw him in the food court yesterday. He said he had something big coming. Srinatarajan and Nishant Kumar write on what's percolating out there. Let's get out front of Barron's on Saturday morning. This is what Bloomberg does best. Srinatarajan reports Millennium Management will take a $100 million hit in the collapse of First Brands. Paul and I talked about this yesterday. First Brands is an auto supplier, and this, Paul, is precisely what we're talking about in the shadows out there. Now, they say that Apollo and others bet against First Brands. I guess they're having a good week at Apollo.
진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 매도 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 매도 진입 사인 드립니다.
I mean, yeah, and one of the things I think people are trying to figure out with First
체결되었습니다.
Brands,
836점 수혜입니다. 836점
unreported debt there. There's probably some financing
매도
debt
진입
they've got
사인
in there.
드립니다.
And the hedge funds apparently took some pretty sizable positions.
Do we feel like it's 2005 or do we feel like it's 2006?
Oh boy, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, some of these companies you never heard of, but they're out there in the marketplace, in the capital markets, and when these companies, these levered companies,
현재 미국 시장에 셧다운이라는 큰 리스크가 존재하기 때문에 충분히 큰 매도세에 올라올 수 있다고 판단이 됩니다. 자, 긴 대응이 이루어지더라도 매도 진입권 지속적인 대응이 나오도록 하겠습니다.
Here's a term we haven't heard in a long time, Tom: factoring. Some 70% of the auto suppliers' revenues were channeled through factoring. People familiar with the company's finances.
That's like a retail thing where you're providing funds up money on a trust business, like Bloomingdale's next door to us. They factor out the Chanel and Christian Dior makeup that Lisa buys.
Yep.
I mean, they're factoring that out up front. Sri Natarajan with that. You're going to hear a lot more about this through the day. The headline again from Natarajan and Kumar, Millennium takes 100 million hit in collapse of First Brands. Again, Millennium takes 100 million hit. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has gathered for an unprecedented meeting of the nation's top generals and admirals to declare a new era at the Pentagon.
For too long, we've promoted too many uniformed leaders for the wrong reasons, based on their race, based on gender quotas, based on historic so-called firsts. We've pretended that combat arms and non-combat arms are the same thing. We've weeded out so-called toxic leaders under the guise of double-blind psychology assessments, promoting risk-averse, go-along-to-get-along conformists instead. You name it, the department did it. Foolish and reckless political leaders set the wrong compass heading, and we lost our way. We became the woke department.
Speaking at Marine Base Quantico, Secretary Hegseth said the new department's only mission will be war fighting, preparing for war, and preparing to win. President Trump will address the top brass in a few minutes. Congressional leaders and President Trump have not reached a deal to avoid a government shutdown tonight. A government shutdown could mean the furlough and firing of federal workers. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Time.
This is at the White House. As Michael Barr says, the president will speak at Quantico before a helicopter ride to Quantico. Here he is at the White House, the president of the United States.
To our country illegally, and they want to give them full health care benefits. They want to open the wall again. Can you believe it? I can't even believe it. They want to open the wall. They haven't taken away boys playing in women's sports. They haven't done that. Men playing in women's sports. It's like they don't change. They lost an election in a landslide, and they don't change.
How long do you plan to give Hamas to respond to the ceasefire proposal you've laid out?
Well, we're going to do about 3 or 4 days. We'll see how it is. All of the Arab countries are signed up. The Muslim countries all signed up. Israel's all signed up. We're just waiting for Hamas. And Hamas is either going to be doing it or not. And if it's not, it's going to be a very sad end.
And is there a deadline, Mr. President? Is there room to negotiate, or is this a take it or leave it deal? Is there room to negotiate with Hamas, or is this a take it or leave it deal?
You know, with Hamas, we want very simple. We want the hostages back immediately, and we want some good behavior. And, you know, it's pretty simple. You don't get simpler. Think of it. We've signed every country in the Middle East. This was like an impossible thing. It's never been done before. This is more than Gaza. Gaza was big stuff. But Gaza is a piece of it.
And if they reject the deal, you said that Israel has your backing to do whatever they need to do. What do you envision that
I will let them go and do what they have to do. They can do it pretty easily. I would let them go and do what they have to do. You know, we've killed about 25,000 Hamas. So certainly they paid a big price for October 7th. And this is a whole new group. You know, they come in and they come in and they keep coming. But this is a whole different group. And their leadership has been killed 3 different times. So they paid a big price. We hope that they're going to have a nice, calm life. Maybe it won't happen. But if it does, it'll be one of the greatest things ever to happen. We'll have actual peace in the Middle East.
Are you preparing to take strikes against drug gangs in Venezuela, sir?
We'll see what happens with Venezuela. Venezuela's been very dangerous with drugs and with other things. And they've been very, very dangerous. So we'll see what happens with Venezuela. We had a lot of drugs coming in through water. We call it water drugs, just a simple term. We don't have any boats on the water. There are no boats. There are no fishing boats. There are no anything. So we hit a number of boats. You probably saw that. And since we did that, we have absolutely no drugs coming into our country via water because it was lethal. And now we'll look at cartels. We're going to look very seriously at cartels coming by land.
What do you plan to tell the Department of War in this address? Why gather all the generals in one place for a speech?
Well, this is only an esprit de corps. You know what esprit de corps is? This is only a spirit. We're going to be talking to him. Pete Hegseth is talking right now. I'm going to have to leave because I have to talk to him. But these are our generals, our admirals, our leaders. And it's a good thing. A thing like this has never been done before because they came from all over the world.
And there's a little bit of expense, not much, but there's a little expense to that. We don't like to waste it. We'd rather spend it on bullets and rockets, frankly. But this was the one time we had to do a great spiritizing. It's going to be great. I've seen it already. We have every general, every admiral. We have great people. We have our real warriors over there. And when they're not good, when we don't think they're our warriors, you know what happens? We say, you're fired, get out. We had some real bad ones last time. You know, I rebuilt the military, the entire military. But I had a couple, and I had unbelievable people. To do that, you have to. But I had unbelievable people in there. But I also had some bad ones at the top, like Millie and Mattis and that Jesper. I called him too. Always too late, Jesper. He was horrible. So, but I learned because you know I was just in there, and I put these people in. They were recommended by rhinos and others, and they're not good. What we have now is the best. But even despite that, I rebuilt the military in my first term. We had a great first term. We had the greatest economy ever, and it's being beaten by a lot this time. So I'm going over. I'm going to be meeting. I'm going to be meeting with generals and with admirals and with leaders. And if I don't like somebody, I'm going to fire them right on the spot.
The President of the United States to the helicopter with a Washington Monument in the background on a end of quarter day here, September 30, and he will go to Quantico. It's, you know, you and me in traffic,
Sure.
mere mortals.
Yeah, he
you know,
doesn't do
the
that, no.
Uber.
No.
It's an hour and something down 395 and 95 down the Potomac. It's
Yep.
gorgeous.
Yep.
Garrett Graff, who I adore, he was my book of the summer one year, his definitive book on the FBI. Absolutely superb. Garrett Graff beautifully paints Quantico within the training, particularly after 9/11, the center point of restructuring our intelligence effort there. I can't say enough about. I'll get the book up here in a moment, folks. I'll get that out on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just a superb effort by Garrett Graff on FBI Quantico.
Yep.
This is the military at Quantico as well. The real yield, I haven't mentioned it in what, Paul, 2 days?
Yeah.
1.77%.
Okay. Yep.
Stasis really not moving all that much. Oil pulls back from 69. Brent 67.06. I think the missed conversation of the day, we had technical issues with Giovanna Bracecci, but you know, as the president mentions a complex proposal to Hamas, he wants to sell it as something bigger for the Arab community. And this is an unknown, to say the least.
Yes, and just some of the readout from Bloomberg News, President Trump saying Hamas has 3 to 4 days to respond to this peace plan that Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu had agreed to yesterday. So again, time is of the essence for Hamas, and I think if Hamas rejects the deal, President Trump says Israel will do what it has to do.
Can we have a moment of silence here for someone I know you adore, Michael K.
Sure.
자, 여기서 수익 청산하도록 하겠습니다. 자, 수익 청산 사인드립니다. 여기서 수익 청산
I don't think anybody with the Yankees ever retired.
No, I don't think he's retired. I think he was just saying this is the end of his broadcast year because he doesn't get to do the
주문 청산이
postseason.
완료되었습니다.
That goes to the
Okay,
national
well, I'll go
network.
with that as well. But the answer is Michael K.
Many years,
is just exquisite.
Fantastic.
I mean, just absolutely fantastic. People go, Tom, you hate the
저희
Yankees,
4차
but actually,
진입주
it's
대기하도록
so
하겠습니다.
different. Folks, for those of you
진입주
nationwide who
대기하도록
have never
하겠습니다.
experienced this, I can't imagine it's two venues as different as Fenway Park and
Yankee Stadium.
It's
But
magical.
yeah, I mean, as a Yankee fan, I mean, nobody has more respect for the Red Sox as much as we detest them than Yankee fans because we play them 17 times a year and they're so good every year. And it's always like they've played a
조금 더
gajillion games
지켜보고
between them. And it's probably
진입 사인
50-50 in terms of wins and losses.
I suffer from Flat Earth Society, and that you understand in my scarred Calvinist childhood, never, ever, 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 ever did the Red Sox win.
And
in
then
October 1, 1967, was a seismic shift, even though we lost to the Cardinals in the World Series. I can't fathom the psychological damage that was done to the youth of the Boston Red Sox. Okay, I'll play a Yankees song in the next hour. I'm sorry. What do you do when you need to win? You play the cards.
Shake it up. Shake it up. Shake it up. shake it up. Dance all night, get real loose. You don't need no bad excuse. Dance all night with anyone. Don't let nobody pick your bone. Shake it up. Shake it up. Yeah, shake it up. Shake it up. That's right.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
Very important headlines out, and they move the market.
How do you think the Fed is assessing what's happening with these tariffs?
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
The economic calendar jam-packed today.
And Michael Barr with news.
President Trump is questioning Russian leader Vladimir Putin's actions.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. Let me tell you, when Paul comes in on the Sikorsky from the shore, it isn't as quick as a presidential travel.
That was fast.
Down the Potomac.
Yeah.
Was that fast?
That was fast. I mean, I guess he just hops up and gets going. But we have footage now of Marine One at Quantico.
I wonder how fast
So
they
there
go.
you go. I mean, they know what they're doing.
100 and something miles an hour, probably.
Marines.
Boom, you're there.
They get you where you need to
They
go.
don't even get. It's like when you fly from Rochester to Toronto. You don't even get up to. You put the wheels down as the moment you take off.
Yep, absolutely. That's how they roll down there. All right.
We'll see. A busy day here this morning. The Secretary of Defense is finished speaking. Generals stand up is the way generals stand up. They don't stand up like you or I do. Different. Dressed a large number of olive garb here. We're looking at the backs of the assembled generals and admirals. I'm sure there's some Admiral Blue in there as well as they await the President of the United States. We'll give you Mr. Trump's speech. We just heard from him from the White House as well. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning were brought to you by Van Eck, founded in 1955. Van Eck has been guided by conviction, not convention, spotting change early and turning it into opportunity from the very start. And we thank Van Eck for their support of what we're doing here. From the Interactive Broker Studios, I think we've got to look at stock movers. We're highly prepared for this. I got a memo from her this morning.
Okay.
I didn't read it, but at least I got a memo. Lisa Mateo with our podcast of Stock Movers.
You got it. Okay, let's start with satellite TV company EchoStar. Their shares have been up as much as 8%. So sources are saying, yes, it's in talks to sell some of their wireless spectrum to Verizon Communications. EchoStar, they've been trying to get out of bankruptcy, right? Resolve this FCC investigation. So they've been selling off, rights of the airwaves last month. SpaceX, AT&T, we've heard about. And its CEO said they're going to consider parting with additional wireless spectrum too.
Chairman and co-founder Paul brief us here on Charles William Ergen.
Charlie Ergen, satellite television pioneer, kind of like John Malone. Investors will follow him blindly.
University of Tennessee.
Yeah, phenomenal moneymaker for shareholders. Except for the last 10 years. He bought a bunch of wireless spectrum, and you either build a wireless network, which nobody else needs in this country, or you sell that spectrum to somebody else and make a lot of money. He's now finally selling that spectrum to someone else and making a lot of money. No, but he's been
It's like
effectively.
an asset. It's
Yeah,
like
the market's forcing him to sell.
I want to point out, Mr. Ergen was a young kid in the block when all this was a big deal. Now, age 72. Lisa,
자,
please
진입 사인
continue.
드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 매수 진입 사인 드리도록
Spotify, ticker
하겠습니다.
SPOT. Their shares have been down as much as 4%.
자, 매수 진입 주니까 88.25입니다. 88.25. 자, 매수 진입 사인 드립니다.
Move to executive chairman, and then he'll be replaced by two new co-chief executive officers. So you have one guy, Gustav Soderstrom, he's the chief product technology officer. Then you have Alex Nordstrom, he's the chief business officer, and they're starting January
자,
1st.
지니까 24,828.25 매수 진입 상대학입니다.
Get things right, make things
매수
for the customers,
진입
increasing
사인입니다.
their prices too.
I should have listened to Afterthought. I'm like, Afterthought, I'm on Tidal. She goes, I want Spotify. Paul, from the bottom of COVID, the puppy's from 100 to 700.
I know. It's just it's extraordinary company, a great technology.
Are you on Spotify?
No. But
Stephanie
all the
Roth, are
offspring
you on
are.
Spotify?
I love it for the
See.
podcast.
Of course you do. The offspring are all.
Nailed that. Good morning to the Philippines. I'm in Rome with a bunch of Philippines people, and that's how they listen to Bloomberg.
The founder's only
Surveillance on
42,
Spotify.
and he's kind of stepping down. I don't know. All right.
Okay. Next, you have
We'll
one
see.
more for us?
I do. We have to get to beauty, Tom. Come on. Coty shares up nearly 3%. Their beauty brands, right? Like CoverGirl, Max Factor, Sally Hansen.
Yeah.
They've been struggling, right, to draw those shoppers in. So they were going to bring this strategic review, consumer beauty brands, reworking their portfolio, right? The cosmetic labels, refocusing on fragrances, because actually fragrances is their best thing. The only thing I want to make across is that it does not include their higher end beauty division, which is like Gucci, Burberry, Calvin Klein, like those type of
They're
clients.
not part of
They're
the
not part of it.
transaction.
They're not part of it. Yes. Also, Kylie Cosmetics, which I know my daughter is very yes. That's a
Kylie
big-
Jenner?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
See, I'm looking at it, Paul,
Yes.
and there's no revenue growth. I mean, I got 10% revenue growth in 2024, losses to single digit now. You bring down EBITDA to a merely mortal 18 cents on the dollar, and net income isn't happening.
Nope.
Free cash flow is sort of tepid to south. I mean, what do you do? Blow it up?
I don't know. I thought this was a good business.
Lisa, what do you do? Stephanie, you want to weigh in here? The problem is you two wouldn't be caught dead behind a Max Factor counter,
No,
right?
that's a lot of them, like in the pharmacy stores. That's where you kind of find a lot of them too. But no, the kids and myself, I like the higher end than that.
You have to-
Thank you.
you have-
I will
Get in
admit. I
line
will
with
admit.
Mrs. Keene.
Invest in your face. That's what they
Yes.
say.
Have you been to the new Dior, Stephanie Roth?
I have not.
Oh, they have a separate door just for you. They have like cosmetics and then they have everything else. Lisa Mateo, thank you so much. It's a podcast, Stock Movers, this morning. Patiently waiting here, Stephanie Roth, who really, really has helped us over the last number of weeks in perceiving what's going on. What is the animal spirit, the nominal GDP-ishness of this American economy? It's confusing, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think it's confusing because the trend in payrolls has slowed down, but that's not indicative of an economy that's notably weak. And I think that's what we've learned in the past couple of weeks is that consumer spending is actually fairly solid. Certainly the PCE report highlighted that. And we'll likely see whenever we do get the data that the labor market looks a lot better than the current 3-month average in non-farm payrolls of 29,000. So whenever we do get the next payrolls print, it will probably show that payrolls are trending at closer to 60 or 70,000. The unemployment rate is still kind of steady, and the economy is largely holding up okay.
Is that acceptable? Because I've been weaned on anything under 100,000 is a failure of the American economy. Am I wrong?
Not anymore. It's different. The new trend or the new sort of level that we should be looking for is something like 60 or 70,000. That's a very healthy payrolls growth, given the supply dynamics that have changed this year.
Talk to us about the supply dynamics. There's just not enough labor with the border being closed, on the southern border being closed, less labor supply for agricultural, home construction, things like that.
Yeah, it's less labor supply, but then the demand has also come down at the same time. So now it's kind of in balance at this slower level, which is okay as long as companies aren't moving forward with layoffs, which they're not.
So with the labor market's generally okay. How about this inflation? We haven't really seen the tariff suggested inflation that I think a lot of people were thinking about. How do you guys view tariffs and maybe the impact on prices?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is that it's a much slower moving animal than many expected. Many were looking for a big number in the summer months, then we'd kind of move on from the tariff conversation and it would be this sort of transitory concept. Instead, it's looking like companies are slow to pass it through. We should look for a string of inflation readings that are close to 0.3% month on month, running at about 3% year over year for a while. And then then the dynamics will change, and once we kind of lapse the year over year period, and then we'll slow back down to something that's closer to 2%. But this could take a while.
So if you're the Federal Reserve, you've cut 25 basis points. Now what do you do?
Yeah, you watch the data, and perhaps
you watch the data.
Perhaps, well, to the extent there is data, and then you cut a couple more times, and then see where things stand. And I think that's what Fed speakers have been guiding to more recently. Is perhaps rates are still restrictive, not significantly so. And they'll probably cut a couple more times, but a little bit more gradually than the market was anticipating.
Stephanie Roth with us this morning from Wolf. We really appreciate her with us. We're awaiting the President of the United States to speak to generals at Quantico. Paul, how unusual this is. The 11 four-star combatant commanders typically meet with the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff in Washington twice a year.
Okay.
And this is over 300.
300.
Generals and admirals. How unusual this as well. I look, Stephanie, at where we are, and I guess it links into earnings, but I want to link it into revenue. At Wolf Research, when you talk to the beasts known as security analysts, do they up their revenue tone based on a buoyant nominal GDP?
Yeah, I mean, the world runs in nominal GDP. Real GDP is something that is more for academics and economists, but the world and companies operate in a nominal world. And to the extent that there is price inflation that does support nominal revenues, and the nominal backdrop
자,
is kind of
지켜보고
okay.
대응 이어나가도록 하겠습니다. 조금 더 지켜보고 목표 설정까지 지켜보고 대응 이어나가도록 하겠습니다.
Ms. Roth is with Wolf Research. This is the most important conversation of the day for those of you across this nation. Nathan Dean is Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Policy Analyst, which means he's encyclopedic. Nathan, I read every word of the Washington Post sources say article this morning on this gathering of the military. Give us the Nathan Dean brief.
So I think a lot of this is what we call the high school pep rally. Obviously, President Trump and Secretary of Defense /War Pete Hegseth are gathering the troops in front of a large screen. The White House has said that they're going to record this. They're going to put this out. They're going to put, essentially distribute this out to the public. So, this is definitely a messaging argument as we are getting into this November 2026, season cycle, if you will. And I think this is one of the messages you're just going to continue to hear from the White House. Is exactly that.
All of our Hollywood knowledge and my amateurness, Nathan, you're the pro officer and a gentleman. How many times have you seen Top Gun, Paul?
Oh, too many to count.
Too many times to count. What's the tension between enlisted and starred officers, Nathan Dean, as they look at this president of the United States?
Well, I think a lot of it, even just similar to what we see in the market, it's about clarity. I talked to our new senior defense analyst, Wayne Sanders, about this all the time. And whether you're in the defense or the market, it's about clarity. You want to see what the messaging is coming from the White House, and you want a decent idea of where things are going over the next 6 to 9 months. And look, obviously you can't be perfect, but messaging is something that once it gets down to the troops and gets down to the traders and so forth, at least they know what they're working with. And so that's why I think this meeting today, I just said the word pep rally, but we're certainly going to be watching this to make sure that if there are goals and objectives that are issued here, that at least we have an idea of what they are going to be doing over the next 6 months.
Nathan, is your government going to shut down tonight at midnight?
So I'm a little bit out of consensus, and I think that there's still a chance that the government could remain open. Polymarket's at 80% right now, so I'll definitely come back tomorrow and say I'm sorry if the government shuts down. But what we're telling our clients right now is you need to prepare for a shutdown, and this really is two things. One is headline risk, the other is lack of data. Now, when the government shut down for 35 days in 2018, 2019, the S&P dropped about 15% before it rallied, and it was actually above about 8% when it reopened. I think Washington, at least the market, is a little bit more prepared for the lack of bipartisanship. This is something that's nothing new. It was a little bit different back in 2018. But the lack of data is what people are really interested in, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics has already said we're not issuing reports. There's a lot of folks out in Chicago that rely on USDA and CFTC ag reports. That's not going to be there. So that's most likely going to be your two short-term impacts.
Nathan Dean with us. We continue with Mr. Dean from our Washington News Bureau. I really can't say enough about his expertise on the workings, the interstitial action within the Beltway of Washington. Tom Keenan, Paul Sweeney, across the nation and worldwide, thank you for being with us on YouTube. Thank you on all of our different audio efforts. At Quantico, the admirals and generals are assembled, a uniform field of pretty much the green of the American military uniform. There is a flag out of the movie Patton in the background behind the lectern with, I'm going to say, Paul, 19 or 20 flags. Yep. Nathan Dean is the only one who can tell from this distance what each flag means.
Exactly. Nathan, I know down in D.C., the folks are probably trying to think about if there is a shutdown, how does it play politically for each party? Does one party maybe more at risk than the other?
Yeah, so shutdowns only occur when both parties believe that they're going to be politically advantageous by that. And that's what I'm going to be looking for the Democrats tonight on, because the Democrats really have two goals in this. One is to be seen fighting President Trump, and the second is to try and extend ACA subsidies from Obamacare that expire at the end of this year. Now, the Republican goal at this point is they think they have the moral high ground. The House has already passed a 7-week continuing resolution. It's a clean continuing resolution. And generally speaking, parties that pass clean resolutions are the ones that usually can step up and say, we're trying to keep the government open. There was some polling data that came out yesterday that suggests that the independents of the United States would actually blame more Republicans than Democrats. I think that situation can change. So if there is a shutdown, I think what happens here is the Democrats come back and they say, okay, we've achieved one of our two goals. We've achieved the goal that we've been seen fighting President Trump, placating to progressives that want to do this. And now it's figuring out an endgame strategy, because I don't think you're going to get the ACA subsidies while the government is shut down. That's why in the note that I put out this morning, I think that you could potentially see a reopening of the government by this weekend at the earliest. Because that's important from the long-term impact of this, because if this shutdown goes longer, Henrietta Trey's on this program has said this many times, and I'm going to steal this, is that there are 750,000 government workers that aren't going to get paid probably by the middle of October, and there's an economic impact of that as well.
Nathan, is the election of November 2026 already started? I mean, you're grizzled at this. Do we wait for the spring, or does it start now when the Red Sox beat the Yankees?
I think it starts when the Red Sox beat the Yankees. But no, actually, what I joke by that is that it is started, but it's all about momentum. I mean, look, come November 2026, I'm not exactly sure that many people are going to go into the voting booth and say, you know what, based upon the conversation I heard on Bloomberg Radio, I'm going to vote this way or the other, depending on the shutdown. But it's all about momentum, and it's all about trying to get small wins. So obviously the election season is here, but there is plenty of time for the Democrats, if they ultimately get the blame for this, to come back.
Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence, stay with us. We're gonna hold you over until we see the president. I like it. Nathan Dean opening up for the president of the United States.
Sure,
it works. In the zeitgeist, Nathan, the gentleman from Illinois and Tokyo, Emmanuel of the Democratic side, he's in the news. Does Rob want to go left progressive, or does he want to, dig the trenches and try to discover a centrist Democrat party?
So full disclosure, I'm a Chicagoan by birth. So obviously I know Mayor Emanuel fairly well. But I'll say here is that, when he was running for mayor, or when he was mayor of Chicago, he had an issue with the progressive side of the Chicago Democratic Party. So I think initially what you're going to see him right now is come out and be more moderate, but he's always going to have the back of his mind that he's going to need that progressive support if he has any chance of running for president. And this was, honestly, I think this is good politics for him at the moment, because there is no leadership right now, I would argue, amongst the Democratic Party. Is it the governors? Is it the Washingtonians? We just don't know. And so certainly he can go out there and try and see what happens.
Paul, have you ever seen a more disciplined, still audience than what we've observed for an hour and 15 minutes?
I know. I guess the generals and admirals, they know how to follow orders.
Still, there's no fidgeting.
Although I have to admit, I see a lot of bald heads in this shot.
Well, they're older. Watch yourself, wise guy.
Gonna have the whole Army and Navy coming after me.
Bar, do you see what I put up with, Mike?
Oh my!
Can we take, Nathan Dean? We're going to let you go so you can get back to reporting on this as we await the president. Nathan Dean, wonderful leadership at Bloomberg Intelligence on the polity of Washington. Sweeney saved me today, folks, because the first night game I ever saw, sitting 3 rows back of the Cleveland Indians dugout, was Rocky Colavito. And I was that age where it was like, it might as well have been Hollywood. Oh, yeah. And I apologize, I'm hardwired, always and forever. The Clevelands are called the Indians, and you say they're the Guardians.
They're the Guardians now. And but we saw with the NFL Washington Commanders, President Trump was saying, hey, bring back the Redskin name. I don't know.
We're going to catch up on the markets right now with futures improving -8. From the Interactive Broker Studios of Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
Yeah, we've got stocks lower, still at the dollar, slipping. Gold taking a break from that record rally. Right now, we'll start with NASDAQ futures, little change, down about 16 points. Dow futures off about 0.1%. Same for S&P futures. In the yield space, right now, the 2-year, 3.61%. That's down 1 basis point. We have the yield on the 10-year, 4.13%. That's down 1 basis point. We go over to gold. COMEX gold right now, down 0.2%, $3,846 an ounce. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, little change. Companies making news. We'll start with CoreWeave. It has signed a deal to supply Meta Platforms, which is as much as $14.2 billion worth of computing power. And this really helps the company diversify its business away from Microsoft, which has really been its largest customer. And sources say Millennium Management taking a $100 million hit in the collapse of auto parts supplier First Brands, and that's tied to those short-term loans that it offered First Brands to finance the inventory. And finally, Hertz. They want to make your used car buying experience easier. HertzCarsales.com. Yeah, you can now browse, finance, and purchase vehicles entirely online. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now wherever you get your podcasts. I need another cup of coffee. Back to you guys.
Just butchered that. Paul Hertz. Are they still in business?
Yeah, I'm a gold circle thingamajig person. So
자, 분당 개장까지 약 10분 앞두고 있습니다. 현재 매수 진입권 3계약 기준 약 30만 원 순식권에서 대응 이어나가고 있습니다. 조금 더 지켜보고 대응 이어나가도록 하겠습니다.
We've spent weeks trying to get her in here. I'm so sorry you're here for 40 seconds.
자, 개장 이후 드리는 사인에 집중 부탁드리도록 하겠습니다.
Suki Cooper joins us. What's it like
자, 잠시 후
working with
10분
Stephen
뒤
Englander at Standard Chartered?
연장 시작됩니다.
I'm inspired every day. It's fantastic.
Inspire us with a broader commodity trend. Rishi Sharma would say, we're waiting for a super commodity trend. Is it upon us, Suki Cooper?
We still see further highs for the gold market. We've seen a number of factors driving the market, and it's changed. At the start of this year, we saw a shift away from central bank flows, driving the market to ETF factors becoming much more important. And now we've seen the correlation between real yields and gold coming back. The macro environment is increasingly important. So ranging from concerns around the US potential shutdown, government shutdown, to the scope for Fed to cut rates further, ranging to tariff concerns as well. All of these factors are playing into safe haven demand for gold.
Is there a valuation call ever for gold and other precious metals, or is it just people are buying them, they're buying them? I just never know how to value gold or get a sense of when it's expensive.
Gold, I think you need to view it as a commodity and a currency. So when investor appetite is lacking, that's when the jewelry market, the physical market becomes important. So like the 1990s, that's when the jewelry market set the floor for gold. And that's what was happening over the last couple of years. It was really that central bank demand that was not just setting the floor, but driving it higher. But now we're seeing it behave as a currency. And that's when these external factors like the dollar become much more important.
Bill Winters would say to me, hey, stupid, ask her about the Pacific Rim. Indonesia, Freeport, they had a terrible accident there. I did a lot with FCX years ago. Where is Suki Cooper on the given supply of stuff in the commodity space? Are we running out of iron ore? Are we running out of gold as new supply? And frankly, the softs as well.
When we look at the gold markets, the supply has been very easily absorbed. And yes, this Grasberg force majeure has meant that we've seen supply coming offline. We're going to see quite a sharp drop.
Force majeure is French. If you go to the University of Birmingham, I have no idea what it means. Continue.
But next year, they're looking for a decline in output around about 35%. So that means around about 17 tons will be offline. And yes, it tightens the market, but these are the sort of flows we can see in the ETFs on a daily basis. So the market can absorb such a loss, but it just tightens our underlying balance.
I mean, we all talk about gold, rightfully so, up 45% year to date, but spot silver, and that's up like 60% this year. What's driving that?
Silver to me is a fascinating market given its vast array of end usages. But until this year, silver had been lacking gold's outperformance. And that was partially because central bank demand was driving gold, and silver didn't have that kicker, even though it's deeply undersupplied for the past few years. But this year, because we've seen gold now pivoting to driving, following those macro factors, silver is now starting to ride on its coattails and relatively is underinvested. So those ETF flows in silver are picking up at an even faster pace and up almost 3,000 tons.
Tell us about the things off the vision. I mean, with Standard Chartered Bank to look to Australia in iron ore. Is the dynamic of iron ore into Shanghai iron ore, is it normal, the flows to China and all?
Iron ore is not a market that I look at in detail, so I can't share.
It's surveillance, you can make it up.
But looking at the gold flows into China, that's something that we can monitor. And we see that China's appetite for gold, appetite for commodities remains strong. whether we're looking at
Right.
the copper market, silver
Yeah, I was going
market,
to say
gold market.
copper. People used to, like the copper inventories, did they have like a strategic copper reserve? Do they have like 7 Fort Knoxes of copper out there?
There's some commodities where we're starting to see a build. We haven't got visible data on how much strategic stockpiles there might be, but markets like platinum,
Right.
we've seen imports far outpacing consumption.
Suki Cooper with us for the next 3 hours as we wait the president to come out of Quantico. She is with the Standard Chartered Bank and just definitive on commodities, except iron ore. Did you see how I fell off a cliff on that?
No, yeah, no. Wait,
Down
she's
in
only doing
flames.
the precious metals.
Englander would have made something up. Suki wouldn't do it.
Precious metals. So I always thought it was just gold and silver, but it's also platinum and palladium. Can you talk to us about those two metals, how you track them?
Yes, so when we think about gold, lots of currency factors, lots of macro factors. But when we come to platinum and palladium, those underlying supply and demand dynamics, much more important. So the platinum market heavily undersupplied for the past 3 years. But again, it's those above ground stocks. And initially we started seeing China building its stocks, but now we've also seen an influx into the US as well. So it's tightened the market quite considerably. And now just the smallest disruptions like the flooding in South Africa, heavy rains disrupting output, has resulted in the prices spiking.
Suki, our team of interns are useless. I'll book it right now. I desperately want Englander and Cooper in studio together.
That'd be fantastic.
If you can make that happen. Suki Cooper with Barclays for years and Standard Chartered Bank definitive on commodities. We now go to Quantico, the Secretary of Defense, talking to admirals and generals. Never before has the nation seen this in our history, and most certainly from the Defense Department of the late 1940s. The Secretary introduces the President of the United States.
Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Oh, don't laugh. Don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know, just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future. But you just feel nice and loose, okay? Because we're all on the same team. And I was told that, sir, you won't hear a murmur in the room. I said, we got to loosen these guys up a little bit. So you just have a good time. But I want to thank Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, General Raisin Kane for a reason, they call him that. When I heard his name, I said, you're the guy I'm looking for. The Joint Chiefs of Staff and so many others in this room who together represent the greatest and most elite fighting force in the history of the world, the United States military. We're very proud of our military. I rebuilt the military during my first term. It's one of the greatest achievements. We had the greatest economy in history, and I built the military. Those are the two things I say more than anything else. And I also kept us safe at the borders. We had very good borders. We didn't have people coming in from jails and prisons and everything like took place over the last 4 years. They'll never forget what happened to this country over the last 4 years with the incompetence. There could be no higher honor than to serve as your commander-in-chief. It is a great honor. I look at you, you're just incredible people. Central casting, I might add. To each and every one of you, I thank you for your unwavering devotion to the armed forces and to the country that we've all sworn a sacred oath to defend. We all have that oath, every one of us. I'm thrilled to be here this morning to address the senior leadership of what is once again known around the world as the Department of War. I know Pete spoke about it. He gave a great speech, I thought. Great speech. I don't want him to get so good. I hate that. You know? No, I hate it. I almost fired him. I said, you can't. I don't want to go on after that. No, he gave a great speech, but he talked about Department of War. We were sitting there. I said, didn't it used to be called the Department of War? And he goes, yes, sir. They changed it like in the early 50s. So we won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything in between and everything before that. We only won. And we changed it to defense and I said, what do you think? How do you think if we changed it back? Would that be a nice idea? And Pete loved it immediately. Some people thought about it. You know, they gave it a little thought. But in the end, we did it. And I
잠시
have
후
to be
본전
honest, it's so
시작됩니다.
popular.
본전 개장 이후
I thought it
드리는
would be met
사인에
with
집중
fury on the left.
부탁드리겠습니다. 본전
They're sort of
개장까지 약
giving up, I must
10초를
be
앞두고
honest with
있습니다.
you. They've had it. They've had it with Trump. They've been after me for so many years now. Here we are. Here we are. Come to the White House anytime you'd like. Now
본전
they've given up.
개장되었습니다.
A lot of bad people. But all over, it's been so popular. It's been very popular. I really thought that we were going to have to sort of fight it through. There's been no fight. There's been no fight. Like what I called the Gulf of America, the Gulf of America, because to me it was always the Gulf of America. I could never understand. We have 92% of the frontage. And for years, actually 350 years, they were there before us. It was called the Gulf of Mexico. I just had this idea. I'm looking at a map. I'm saying, we have most of the frontage. Why is it Gulf of Mexico? Why isn't it the Gulf of America? And I made the change, and it went smoothly. I mean, we had a couple of fake news outlets that refused to make the change. And then one of them, AP, took us to court. And we won, and the judge, who was a somewhat liberal judge, said the name is the Gulf of America, because AP refused to call it the Gulf of America. They wrote, they're not a good outfit, by the way. They call it the Gulf of Mexico. I said, no, the Gulf of America is the name. And the judge actually said that, in fact, you can't even go into the room, because what you're doing is not appropriate.
주문 청산이 완료되었습니다.
America. Google Maps changed the name.
매도 진입 사인이
체결되었습니다.
매도 진입 사인
확인 바랍니다.
진입가 19.25입니다.
As Secretary Hexler beautifully described, the name change reflects far more than the shift in branding. It's really a historic reassertion of our purpose and our identity and our pride. That's when we go with the word war. And you know, we want war because we want to have no wars, but you have to be there, and you know, sometimes you have to do it. I have settled so many wars since we're here. We're here almost 9 months, and I've settled 7, and yesterday we might have settled the biggest of them all, although I don't know. Pakistan, India was very big. Both nuclear powers, I settled that. But yesterday could be the settlement in the Middle East. That hasn't happened for 3,000 years. I said, how long have you been fighting? 3,000 years, sir. That's a long time. But we got it, I think, settled. We'll see. Hamas has to agree. And if they don't, it's going to be very tough on them, but it is what it is. But all of the Arab nations, Muslim nations have agreed. Israel has agreed. It's an amazing thing. It just came together. War is very strange. You know, you never know what's going to happen with war. The easiest one of them all is Putin. I said, number one, it's a war that would have never happened if I were president, if the election weren't rigged. If I were president, that war would have never happened, not even a little chance. And it didn't happen for 4 years. But I knew Putin very well, and I thought that would be easy because I know him so well. Well, that one turned out to be the hardest of them all. We had some that were not settlable, and they all got settled. So if this works out, that we did yesterday, with the Middle East, then that's more than a war. That's lots of wars. That's all combined. That's a lot of wars. Many of you were over there in many different capacities in many different countries. That's a big part of the earth. But if that works out, it would be 8+. I could give myself 2 or 3 for that one. And then we just have the one to settle. We have to settle it up with President Putin and Zelensky. Got to get them together and get it done. But the only way we can do that is through strength. If we were weak, they wouldn't even take my phone call. We have extreme strength. We had the horror show in Afghanistan, which is really the reason I think that Putin went in.
주문 청산이 완료되었습니다.
Biden and his team of incompetent people. And that showed, I think it gave him a path in. I wasn't there any longer. I watched that, and it was so horrible. I think it was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. And now we're back. And that's it. We're not going to have any of that crap happen, I can tell you. That was terrible, so terrible. Together we're
자, 다시 한번 매도 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 다시 한번 매도
This
진입
is a spirit that
사인
won
드리도록
and built this
하겠습니다.
nation from
체결되었습니다.
the
확인 바랍니다.
cavalry that
그러니까
tamed the Great Plains
764점
to the ferocious,
공공입니다.
unyielding power of Patton Bradley and the great General Douglas MacArthur. These are all great men. In this effort, we're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%. You'll never see me even waver a
자,
little
매도
bit.
진입
That's the way it is.
764.00
And that
매도
includes our
진입
great police
진행해 나가도록
officers and
하겠습니다.
firemen and all of these people that are doing so well. Together over the next few years, we're going to make our military stronger, tougher, faster, fiercer, and more powerful than it has ever been before. I rebuilt our nuclear, as you probably know, but we'll upgrade that also and just hope we never have to use it. We have to hope we never have to use it because the power of that is so incredible. I see things, I don't think they'd show it to you. I really wouldn't want them to show it to you. But when you see the result of what's left, you never want to use that. Never, never, ever. We were a little bit threatened by Russia recently, and I sent a submarine, nuclear submarine, the most lethal weapon ever made. Number one, you can't detect it. There's no way. We're 25 years ahead of Russia and China in submarines. Russia's actually second in submarines. China's third, but they're coming up. They're coming up. They're way lower in nuclear too, but in 5 years they'll be equal. They're coming up. And you don't have to be that good with nuclear. You could have 1/20th what you have now and still do the damage that would be, that'd be so horrendous. But I announced that, based on his mention of nuclear, and it was really a stupid person that works for him mentioned the word nuclear, I moved a submarine or two, I won't say about the two, over to the coast of Russia, just to be careful, because we can't let people throw around that word. I call it the N word. There are two N words, and you can't use either of them. You can't use either of them. And frankly, if it does get to use, we have more than anybody else. We have better, we have newer, but it's something we don't ever want to even have to think about. But when somebody mentions it, that submarine started immediately thereafter. And it's just lurking, but I'm sure we're not going to have to use it. But it's an amazing, it's undetectable.
자,
Totally.
수익청산
Ours
사인
is-
드립니다.
theirs
여기서
is-
끊어가도록
theirs
하겠습니다.
is
자,
totally detectable.
수익청산
We can
사인
detect it
드리도록
easily. We
하겠습니다.
go right to the spot. But we
자,
have
여기서 끊어가도록 하겠습니다.
genius
자, 수익청산 사인
apparatus that
드립니다.
doesn't allow detection. It doesn't allow detection at all by anybody
수익청산
above
사인
water or
드립니다.
below water. It's incredible. We're way ahead of everybody in that and other things. As a result of the exciting renewal of the spirit of our armed forces, and that's what it is. It's really reaching that spirit, unprecedented heights. Over the past 8 months, new enlistments, I'm so proud of this, have surged to record highs, the highest
주문
we've ever
청산이
had.
완료되었습니다.
And we used to have recruiting shortages. If you remember, about a year and a half ago, I was at the beginning stage of a campaign, and things came out that you couldn't get people to join the armed forces. And by the way, the police also. Fire department. I always put the fire department in because they're great. They're great.
자,
And I get
이어서 바로
95% of
다음
their vote,
진입
too.
사인
That helps.
드리도록 하겠습니다.
When you get 95% of the vote, you always have to mention them. But they're great. And they're brave in our inner cities, which we're going to be talking about, because it's a big part of war now. It's a big part of war. But the firemen go up in ladders, and you have people shooting at them while they're up in ladders. I don't even know if anybody heard that. But
자, 매수 진입 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 매수 진입 한계야.
확인 바랍니다.
752.00입니다. 752.00. 자, 매수 진입 사인 드립니다. 752.00입니다. 24,752. 매수
way up
진입 사인
in
드립니다.
death territory. You fall off that ladder, it's over. It's over. They don't even have to inspect you when you hit the ground. And you have people shooting bullets at them in some of these inner cities. We're not going to let that happen. So I always mention the firemen because that's actually a big problem we have. And they are unbelievable. Like you, they're unbelievable people. For the first time on record in 2025, the Navy, Air Force, and Space Force all met or surpassed their recruiting goals 3 months early. That never happened before. And the Army did even better. Congratulations, Army. They met everything. And these were the highest standards because we're making it larger. So these were much higher standards than you had 4 years ago, 3 years ago, during the sleepy Joe Biden era. And
자, 수익권 진입하였으면 해당 지금 짧게 보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 수익 청산 사인 드립니다. 여기서 수익 청산하도록 하겠습니다. 수익 청산 사인 드립니다. 짧게 끊어보도록 하겠습니다.
The Navy, the Marines were way behind.
주문 청산이 완료되었습니다.
And even Space Force, I love Space Force because that was my
여기서
creation.
8차 진입 대기하도록 하겠습니다.
And the people we put in there were good. I got that right. We put in great people initially, and we've really dominated. We really dominate in that sphere now. We're way behind China and Russia, and now we dominate. Space Force turned out to be a very important thing. I said from the beginning, you know, when Biden came into office, he wanted to terminate it. He said, and this thing called Space Force, so we could get rid of that.
진입 사인드립니다. 매도 진입 사인드리도록 하겠습니다. 매도 진입 사인드립니다. 자, 진입가 766.50입니다. 766.50. 매도 진입 사인드립니다.
But we're now at 106% of our recruiting targets for the year, and that's the best in far more than a generation. And for the Marines, morale is so strong that the Marine Corps will meet its 2026 retention targets before the end of October, which never happens. And that's the earliest it's ever happened in the history of our country. And it makes you feel good, you know. I felt guilty. I'd go make a speech in front of never people like you. You are the leaders, but people, soldiers. And I felt embarrassed because there'd be stories about, you know, we couldn't fill up our Army, Navy, Air Force. We couldn't fill them up. And it was headlines. It was during Biden's 4 years, the auto pen. I call him the auto pen. It's, how would you like to have your thing signed by an auto pen? You know, when I have a general and I have to sign for a general because we have beautiful paper, the gorgeous paper.
자, 짧게 끊어보도록 하겠습니다. 자, 수익 청산 사인 드립니다. 수익 청산 사인 드립니다.
주문 청산이 완료되었습니다.
I want to use the big, beautiful, firm paper. I want to use the real gold writing when you talk about the position, and they're beautiful. And but how would you like to have that where some kid sitting in the back office is having it signed with an auto pen? I thought about it, and I thought about you people first, admirals, generals.
자, 이어서 9차 진입뷰 대기하도록 하겠습니다.
His whole life, he gets into maybe the academies or wherever, however you got there, and you go through years of work, and now you become an admiral or a general or whatever.
그리고 9월
And when you do, the President of the United States signs your commission, as you know, and that commission is beautifully displayed. And I sign it. Actually, I love my signature. I really do. Everyone loves my signature. But I signed it very proudly, and I always think to myself, how can you have an auto pen sign this? It's just so disrespectful. To me, it's just totally disrespectful. And it turned out that almost everything he did was signed by auto pen, except for when he gave his son, Hunter, pardon. He signed that one. And that's actually the worst signature I've ever seen. That was the pen. The auto pen looks much better.
자, 매도 진입 사인 드리겠습니다. 매도 진입 사인 드립니다. 진입가 756.00입니다. 756.00. 매도 진입 사인 드립니다.
Not merely for a few years, but for the decades and generations to come, for centuries. We must be so strong that no nation will dare challenge us, so powerful that no enemy will dare threaten us, and so capable that no adversary can even think about beating us. And we've had
현재 진입권 같은 경우
India
11시
and
약
Pakistan were
15분
going
뒤
at it.
발표될 조尔2
And I
군인은
called them both.
그리고
And in
소비자
this case, I
신뢰
used
지수
trade. I'm not going to trade with you. Use that for
발표까지
nuclear nations,
대응
big
이루어질 수
nuclear.
있는 점 참고
No,
부탁드리겠습니다.
no, you cannot do that. I said, yes, I can. You go into this freaking war that I'm hearing about. You know, actually, they just shot down 7 planes. 7 planes. It was starting. There's a lot of bad blood. And I said, you do this, there's not going to be any trade. And I stopped the war. It was raging for 4 days, but that was just the beginning. And we stopped it. It was a great thing. And the Prime Minister of Pakistan was here, along with the Field Marshal, who's a very important guy in Pakistan. And he was here 3 days ago. And I didn't even realize it as beautiful as he said it, but he said that to a group of people that were with us, 2 generals, but a group, he said, this man saved millions of lives because he saved the war from going on, and that war was going to get very bad, very, very bad. President Trump saved millions and millions of lives. That was a bad war. And I was very honored. I loved the way he said it. Susie Wiles was there. She said that was the most beautiful thing. But we saved a lot of them. Saved a lot of them. Even in Africa, we saved the Congo with Rwanda. They've been fighting for 31 years, 10 million people dead. I got that one done. And very proud of it. So if this works out, we'll have 8 in 8 months. That's pretty good. Nobody's ever done that. Will you get the Nobel Prize? Absolutely not. They'll give it to some guy that didn't do a damn thing. They'll give it to a guy that wrote a book about the mind of Donald Trump and what it took to solve the wars. And he'll get the Nobel Prize will go to a writer. No, but well, let's see what happens. But it's be a big insult to our country. I will tell you that. I don't want it. I want the country to get it. But it should get it because there's never been anything like it. Think of it. So if this happens, I think it will. I don't say that lightly because I know more about deals than anybody. This is what my whole life was based on. And they can change, and this can certainly change. But we have just about everybody. We have one signature that we need, and that signature will pay in hell if they don't sign. I hope they sign for their own good and we create something really great. But to have done 8 of them is just like such an honor. And then we have Putin and Zelensky. The easiest one of them all. I said, that one I'll get done. I thought that was going to be first. The others were much harder, some of them. Azerbaijan this was going on for 36 years. They said, it's not solvable, sir. You don't do it. I said, I will do it. I will do it. And I got on the phone with the 2 countries. They were great. They were great. I knew immediately. I knew as soon as I started talking to them, we're going to solve that war. We did. Now they're so happy. Now they're friends. One said he's been president for 32 years, 22 years. He said, for 22 years, I did nothing but kill his people. They were in the room together at the Oval Office. And they started off spread like this. I have the beautiful Resolute desk. And one was here, and one was here. You couldn't get further away. That's the furthest I've ever seen 2 people in front of me. And as the hour went by, they got closer, closer, closer. And at the end of the hour, we had it done. And they hugged and hugged and hugged. And I said, that's so nice, and you're going to remain friends. And I spoke to them, one of them the other day. He said, no, he's now my friend. But for 22 years, he's been the head of Azerbaijan for 22 years. And the other guy, great guy too, 7. And you know that war, that was a war that was not solvable. He said for 7 years. The other one said for 22 years. All I did was kill his people. That's all I've done. I said, well, we're going to put a stop to that. So we solved that.
The President of the United States at Quantico, he will continue a lengthy speech. Paul, how much further? We think like at least another 15 minutes.
Initially we were told 45 minutes for this.
We thought we would get perspective, so I went out and I did what I usually do, which is I went out to LinkedIn and searched Terrence Haynes.
Nice.
Pangea. And there it is, a gift to us all. This today at 9:15, really only half an hour ago, Terry Haynes with a long, wonderful note trying to place in context this secret meeting. Terry Haynes joins us right now. I love, Terry, how you lead with the Hegseth Trump, quote, secret, unquote, public meeting. Was I wrong, Terry, or basically was this a George Patton redo with that flag in the background?
Yeah, I think we could all have a nice conversation over a drink about the visuals and the and all the rest.
How's it look from the seats? How's it look for an admiral? Give me a random 2-star general. They're 43 years old, top of their class at one of the military schools. They've gone through the food chain. They've dealt with President A, B, C, D, and now Trump. What do they feel like sitting in that chair?
I think the vast majority of the general officers welcome the message and probably think the manner in which the message is being imparted is a bit of overkill. Frankly, there's a lot of support for getting back. There's a lot of support in the rank and file and among general officers for getting back to war fighting and getting back to singular focus at this particular geopolitical risk time in our lives. But it's being hammered in a little too hard, I would guess.
We heard that, Paul. That speech I still carry with me from the Plaza Hotel with Admiral Mullen. Admiral Mullen said exactly what we just heard from
잠시 후
Admiral
약
Haynes.
10분 뒤 발표되는
that's
중요
absolutely
지표
right.
중 금일 중요 지표
The government
불특구
here,
인원 그리고
are we going to
컨퍼런스
be
보드
having
소비자
a
신뢰
functioning government
지수까지
at 12:01 a.m.
현재 진입권
tonight?
지켜보도록 하겠습니다.
I got 60% were shut down for probably a week and 40% that there's some sort of interim deal done, Paul. My 60 is based on a very simple mantra. Performative politics plus policy procrastination is I think the dominant view, but I think the possibility of an interim deal is increasing because there's a deal to be had, frankly, if Senator Schumer wants to take it. And I say that the onus is on Schumer, not at all to be partisan, but because Republicans want something simple and Schumer wants something complicated. Republicans want to keep the government open, no conditions, very clean, and keep going, and they are happy to negotiate on the Obamacare issue, but just don't want to do it on a temporary bill, have a gun put to their heads. But Trump saying that he was interested in firing lots and lots of rank and file government workers, I think, provided an opportunity, because the opportunity now is, look, if Republicans want to negotiate on Obamacare, I can declare a win, and I can keep the government open, which not only helps the average citizen, but also helps government unions, which are predominantly Democratic. And, I live to fight another day, and I keep pushing the message. I don't think that's what his base wants to hear, though. His base wants performative, resist bad orange man sort of stuff, at least for a little while.
Does either side here, Terry, have any meaningful leverage?
Not decisive leverage, if you mean that.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, both of them have leverage. And I'll tell you one thing that is leverage for Republicans, I mean, just off the top of my head, is the whole question that Bloomberg on its platforms has been emphasizing about whether or not we get payrolls data on Friday. That is something that I'm sure it has not escaped the White House, can be used to say to markets and market participants, look, I mean, here's the people who are running up debt and deficit. Here's the people who want to be irresponsible about, not even getting you your data. I mean, it's not us. We're just sitting here, waiting for the Democrats to figure out what they want to do. So, they're using that as a weapon as much as anything else.
Terry Haynes with us across the nation as we close out the 9 o'clock hour. The President of the United States speaking at Quantico. Haynes writing in LinkedIn, beautiful effort by Pangea today. It's a secret public meeting. I have no idea what that means. Hegseth and Trump, and we continue with the President of the United States looking Patton-like. For those of you on YouTube, it's amazing the flag behind what it alludes to in that iconic movie. For those of you on Bloomberg Radio, Terry Haynes gives us perspective here, and of course on the shutdown as well. Terry, recapitulate into the new month, the end of the quarter, into October, the visibility, the tone of centrist Democrats and centrist Republicans. Is the species endangered?
No, I don't think so. And I think you see them, frankly, come together to try to put an end to the shutdown. In all our conversations over the years, I've always said to both of you, there aren't two political parties. There's four factions, from left to right: progressive Democrats, centrist Ds, centrist Rs, rightist Rs. And when you get, right now, why you're going to have a shutdown probably is that Democrats and Republicans, those two factions of each party are sticking together. But when you get a slop towards the middle, when one or the other decide they want to do something different, and that's probably going to be centrist Democrats that feel the pressure, then you get some action. They're still there. They're just sticking with their leaders for the moment. That's all.
So, Terry, is there if we do have a government shutdown here? I mean, should markets care? Do you think? Is it a question of duration?
No, markets should not care. I commend to you the wonderful work that our mutual friend Lori Calvasina at RBC did. If I'm reading Lori's copious report Sunday night correctly, she limbs out 14 shutdowns since the beginning of Ronald Reagan's presidency, so 45 years. And of those 14, 10 of them ended with the S&P 500 being higher than when the shutdown started. So markets, historically don't care and are increasingly given reasons not to care by Washington.
Terry, our audience has such a regard for your linking of history, and particularly the modern fractured political history of America, into the president. We have a book out by the candidate of the Democrats, the Vice President Harris. Other things I mentioned earlier, the mayor of Chicago.
자, 수익 총산 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다. 그래서 수익 총산 사인 드립니다.
Ruminations as well. Terry Haynes on what the Democratic Party looks like to get out to the end of this year, to the end of first quarter next year. What are they going to do?
They're going to continue to struggle for unity and struggle for message. This is a party where the money. Well, this is a party where the money and the energy are demonstrably
주문 청산이 완료되었습니다.
on kind of the progressive left, and that progressive left message does not resonate demonstrably. Also, does not resonate with the public. And Democrats are at their lowest ebb of popularity, and in a generation or more. And they've got to show more than pretending to care. They actually have to care. This is the kind of thing that Rahm gets that most of the rest of them don't.
What's fascinating to me is you say the money. Is there money wrapped around the debris of the Clinton-Obama party? Is there still centrist Democratic? I'm from Arkansas. We're going to do this for the nation. Money.
Far less than there used to be, and it's far less institutional.
체결되었습니다. 확인 바랍니다.
In the
지켜보도록 하겠습니다. 지표할 표 매수 진입권
24, 25 is a lot of the money and a lot of the energy that used to go kind of in the Clinton-Obama direction reflexively, now doesn't. They're very much up for grabs. And last time out, they figured the safer pair of hands on the issues that they cared about, whether tech or business generally, was Trump. And that's a huge change and a huge indictment of the centrist Democrats' ability to sway the party.
Really appreciate this. Terry Haynes interrupting the President of the United States. That's the way to roll.
Right.
Terry Haynes of the Pangea. Folks, I can't say enough. Single reason to sign up for LinkedIn is to get the briefings.
자, 지표할표까지는 약 2분을 앞두고 있습니다. 현재 나스닥 3개월 기준약 200만 원 수익권에 있습니다.
We're brought to you by Oracle. Attention, growing businesses. Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. For new U.S. customers, a minimum financial commitment. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. That's oracle.com/Bloomberg. Paul, I'd suggest a better tape than futures this morning.
Yeah, a little bit here.
We've got fractionally better.
Yeah, we got this market open here, and again, I think there's some economic data that we're certainly going to get later on this week in terms of inflation data.
자, 현재 진입권 수익 차원 사인 드리도록 하겠습니다.
Maybe. get that data here, but we got the S&P pretty much unchanged. The Dow 37 points and the Nasdaq down 60.
We had a very
주문
Red Sox
청산이
show. I
완료되었습니다.
apologize for that. Your
자,
perspective
잠시
on
후
the
약
Yankees.
1분 뒤 나오는
Playing some of the
데이터
best baseball of the
지켜보고
year, so they've
다음
certainly got
주로
momentum.
사인드리도록 하겠습니다.
Yep, and that's kind of all you can ask for right now, because I think when you get to this time of the year, it's all about who's got the momentum, in my opinion.
Are they just about home runs?
They are, and that's a problem. It always has been. And when they don't hit the long ball, they struggle. And that's what happens in the postseason. The pitchers get a little bit better, the defense gets a little bit better.
You know what I like? Their organ player.
마지막 진입될 수 있는 점 참고 부탁드리겠습니다.
Yep.
자, 잠시 후
Ladies and
지표
gentlemen, tonight,
발표됩니다.
6 p.m.
데이터가
John
나옵니다.
Tucker, Scarlett Fu, Paul Sweeney, and I will be tuned in. Red Sox, Yankees, Yankees, Red Sox. Good morning.
Some folks like to get away, take a holiday from the neighborhood. Hop a flight to Miami Beach or to Hollywood. But I'm taking a Greyhound on the
데이터
Hudson
발표되었습니다. 데이터
River
발표되었고요.
line. I'm in a New York state of mind.
자, 발표 결과는 잠시 후 정리해서 급등일보 채널에 올려드리도록 하겠습니다. 자, 매도 진입 사인되도록 하겠습니다. 매도 진입
체결되었습니다.
진입가
확인 바랍니다.
791.50입니다. 791.50, 791.75, 791.75
I'm
매도
Deborah
진입
Rodriguez. President
사인입니다.
Trump is addressing hundreds of U.S. generals and admirals right now at a rare meeting at the Quantico Marine Base in Virginia.
We're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%.
He followed Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, who declared an end to what he called woke culture in the military.
Each service will ensure that every requirement for every combat MOS,
자, 매도
for
진입
every
건
designated
내려가도록
combat arms
하겠습니다.
position, returns to the highest male standard only.
Hegseth told top military brass they should do the honorable thing and resign if they don't like his new approach. On his way to the meeting, President Trump blamed Democrats for a potential government shutdown at midnight and furloughs and layoffs that could follow.
Well, we made you a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And as you know, they wanted to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally, and no system can handle that.
Democratic leaders left a meeting with the president yesterday without an agreement on a funding plan. Correspondent Nicole Killian says Mr. Trump had a quick response.
After President Trump mocked Democratic leaders in a video last night, there is little goodwill on either side, but the Senate may attempt another vote on a government funding bill before tonight's deadline.
The video the president posted to social media featured Democrats Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries in an AI-generated video. Jeffries had a large mustache and a sombrero. There are now 2 hurricanes swirling in the Atlantic. Imelda gained wind strength today north of the Bahamas. Meteorologist Craig Allen.
Imelda is going to take a sharp right-hand turn, sort of being pulled by the circulation of Humberto, and will then head on out to sea. But this time, the track is going to be closer to the island of Bermuda.
Forecasters expect Hurricane Humberto to rough up surf and rip currents along the East Coast from Florida to New Jersey, potentially through the weekend. Puerto Ricans are defending against critics upset Bad Bunny has been chosen to perform at Super Bowl halftime in February. Tomas Mir, who writes for Rolling Stone, says it shows
that Latinos have power. We are a big part of this country, and we are as American as anybody else.
As for Bad Bunny,
I'm really excited for my friends, my family, Puerto Rico, all the Latino people around the world, my culture.
The Dow is up 36 points, S&P down 6. This is CBS News.
A man who became a familiar symbol of the attack on the U.S. Capitol has reportedly filed a lawsuit.
Some reports describe the lawsuit as rambling. The QAnon shaman who wore a horned warrior outfit during the Capitol attack is suing President Trump for $40 trillion. A big change from how Jacob Chansley spoke about Trump while in prison.
I developed a lot of sympathy for Donald Trump because it seemed like the media was picking on him.
Chansley, who was pardoned along with others by Trump, also targets Elon Musk, T-Mobile, the Federal Reserve, Israel, and others in the suit. He alleges they're in a conspiracy to violate the Constitution and that he, the QAnon shaman, is the true American president. Steve Kathan, CBS News.
This morning, prosecutors in New York urged a federal judge to sentence Sean Combs to at least 11 years in prison when he is sentenced on prostitution-related charges Friday, prosecutors calling him unrepentant. Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney.
How do you think the Fed is looking at tariffs, the uncertainty of tariffs?
Let's take a look at the sectors and how they performed.
A lot of investors getting whipsawed every day by news events.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe.
Could we see a market disruption, a market event?
Are people just too exuberant out there?
You see some so-called low-quality stocks driving this short-term rally.
Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
Good Tuesday morning from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City. To our worldwide audience, we are streaming live as well. So head over to youtube.com, Bloomberg Local Radio. Some economic data coming out at the 10 o'clock. We'll get right to that. John Tucker will have a lot of that for us. We're going to check in with Nancy Tengler, CEO and CIO of Laffer Tengler Investments, to get her thoughts on these markets. Vince Piazza, Bloomberg Intelligence energy analyst. He's going to talk to us about Exxon. Exxon cutting 2,000 workers as the oil sector job losses mount there. And we've got WTI crude oil lower again today, just below $63 a barrel. Geetha Ranganathan's going to join us, Bloomberg Intelligence analyst. She covers all the media stuff, talking to us about Spotify, a new CEO, their founder and CEO stepping down. He's 42 years old. What's he going to do? I don't know. But we'll take a look at what's happening here. That stock's been a great performer. Sam Fazeli, Bloomberg Intelligence healthcare analyst. He's going to join us as well, get the latest things on all things in the healthcare space. So Scarlett Fu and I, Paul Sweeney, we have a lot coming up in the next couple of hours on this Bloomberg Intelligence program. Let's kick it all off with John Tucker and a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
All right, Scarlett and Paul, thanks. This Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by IBKR. Financial advisors switch to Interactive Brokers for lowest cost global trading and turnkey custody solutions. No ticket charges, no conflicts of your interest. Learn more at ibkr.com/RIA. Let's get right to it with the job opening labor turnover survey. JOLTS job openings coming in a little higher than expectations, maybe reflecting a bit of resilience in the U.S. labor market. The openings rate 4.3%. The expectation was for 4.2%, exactly matching the prior month's figures. The Conference Board out with its consumer confidence survey, coming in lower than expectations, 94.2. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg were expecting a reading of 96. As far as the major stock averages right now, S&P 500 8 points lower. That's down 0.1%. The Dow is down 10 points, and the Nasdaq 100 71 points lower right now. And Treasuries headed for the third straight quarter of gains. Oil extending sharp decline. OPEC Plus considering boosting the pace of its output buys. Meantime, Laura Nuveen isn't expecting investors to get too rattled in the event of a government shutdown.
From a big picture perspective, we've seen many episodes of these shutdowns. Really, the economic impact tends to be fairly short-lived, and so markets tend to look through this.
Some of the individual shares on the move. EchoStar jumping, the satellite TV company engaging in talks to sell more of its wireless spectrum to Verizon. Those shares up 1%. And then you have CoreWeave signing into deals to supply Meta with as much as $14.2 billion worth of computing power. That's one of the standouts today. CoreWeave shares are 13% higher. And we check the markets for you all day long right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Scarlett and Paul.
All right, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Market Drivers today is brought to you by Van Eck, celebrating 7 years of helping investors stay ahead in a world that never stands still. Visit vaneck.com. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move. Today, I'm Paul Sweeney alongside Scarlett Fu And we're joined by Bloomberg's Bailey Lipschultz. Bailey, what are you looking at today?
Yeah, diving a bit deeper on EchoStar, ticker SATS. Stock right now only up about 1%, had jumped more than 5%, but this coming after a Bloomberg News report that the company is in talks to sell spectrum, some of its wireless spectrum, to Verizon Communications. So this comes after deals with AT&T and SpaceX for some of those licenses. Bloomberg reporting that it probably wouldn't be the case for this Verizon deal to carry the value of some of those deals, north of billions of dollars. But we are certainly seeing a rally this morning in shares of EchoStar. This is a company, guys, that has been trying to work its way out and stave off bankruptcy and dealing with some of the pushback from U.S. regulators. So kind of reworking its business, reworking its opportunities in terms of turning those contracts and some of that spectrum into actual cash in their pockets. Stock year to date up more than 225%, so outperforming those mid-cap
We've been waiting
indexes.
a decade for this performance. Literally, we've been sitting there for 12 years. Charlie Ergen investors, like I have always been a Charlie Ergen backer. He bought the Spectrum like 13, 14 years ago, and either you're going to build a wireless network what this country doesn't need, or you're going to sell the Spectrum, which is always valuable, to somebody else.
But he waited a long time.
He waited forever. So my IRR is like, I don't know. But it was just finally, shareholders and bondholders are going to, I think, get paid here.
Yeah, trading at about $75 a pop, was at 50 back in 2017. Just don't look back towards 2008, 2009 if you've been holding on for the
This
long
is the
run.
old Dish satellite TV company. Okay. I vented there because it was a decade.
No, you should vent after waiting this long. Let's talk about CRH, which is a building materials company, and those shares are up almost 5%.
Yeah, rallying this morning. This is a company that is listed in London, but had pivoted its primary listing to here in the U.S. This comes after the supply makers, so cement, think of things like that, laying out midterm targets for revenue and growth, EBITDA margins into 2030. So they see this year their adjusted EBITDA between $7.5 billion and $7.7 billion. That's midpoints just above what Wall Street was looking for. But when you look at the first blush reaction from analysts, really talking up the fact that they're laying out financial targets 4 or 5 years into the future, averaging an annual revenue between 7 and 9%. So a slow growing business, a buildings material business that has really rallied pretty tremendously since that April bottom on the year, returning about 30%. So a big winner for the company. Again, it also has done tremendously well since it pivoted its primary listing to here in the U.S., but with all the talk about the need for spending not only on infrastructure in the U.S., but around the world, really playing out for that company. And this comes ahead of a capital markets day hosted by the company today here in New York.
Oh, very good. Okay, so yeah, building products.
Building products, boring companies, sure, rallying this morning, but one company that maybe a bit more fun to talk about is Spotify, ticker SPOT, down about 5% today. That's the biggest drop for the company since July 29th, this coming after its CEO, Daniel Ek, planning to step aside after almost 2 decades leading the company. They said that their chief product and technology officer, chief business officer are going to take the reins jointly effective January 1st. So this is a big move for a company that was co-founded by Ek back in 2006, guys. I think if you're 42 and stepping away from being CEO of a company, not a bad move. I'm not quite there. Maybe someday soon, but the stock still year to date returning about 56%. So lapping the Russell 1000, which it would be comped against, which is up about 14%. So a big run for Spotify since he took the company public. But again, giving back some of those recent gains, down about 5%.
I kind of view it as kind of the Netflix of the audio business.
Yeah, a little bit of a utility, but as you mentioned, he's 42. So is he stepping away in quote marks, or is he really stepping away?
Yeah, in there, he's going to have kind of oversight and still work with the company, but handing over kind of the view, going to provide some support and some guidance. The interesting thing, I remember talking to someone who's been a Spotify bull for quite some time, and his kind of base case was, this is a company that can continue to hike prices as much as they want, and consumers are going to kind of shrug off if their streaming service goes from $13 to $16 to $18 a month, just because.
I don't know about shrugging off. Complain loudly while it's happening, but.
Are you a Spotify user?
I am, and I've watched the prices go up steadily every year and complain about it.
Well, Rich Go, we've got him at $9.8 billion, 353rd ranked.
Again, 42 years old, Paul.
I know, fantastic. Great service. Great service. Good for him. Stepping away. All right, very good. Bailey Lipschultz, thanks so much for joining us there. Bailey Lipschultz covers all the equities for Bloomberg News. So we got a lot coming up here. So if you like that, that's a podcast actually. So you can for more conversations like this, subscribe to our new Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. We did get some economic data here. Consumer confidence data came out a little bit weaker than expected. Stephanie Gisha joined us. She's a senior economist at the Conference Board. Stephanie, I'm looking at the Conference Board. Consumer confidence data came out at 94.2 for September. The consensus was 96. Last period was revised higher to 97.8. So down versus last period, down versus the consensus. What do you make of this consumer confidence reading?
So in fact, yeah, you're right. Consumer confidence declined 3.6 points in September. We are now at the lowest level since April. However, we're still way above the April level, which was 85.7. And what has really driven consumer confidence in September is consumers' view of the current situation, which remains positive but has really deteriorated since August.
I also want to ask about the present situation versus the expectation survey. Both of those showed declines from the previous month, but what really drives those reads?
So we have two components in the present situation: how consumers view business conditions and how they view the labor market currently, and they both deteriorated substantially. And this is what has really driven the headline. If you look at the expectations, we also have three components: the future of the labor market, the future of business conditions. They both deteriorated slightly, and we also have consumers' views of future income, which has improved in the month, which means that consumers are still not so much worried that they're going to be losing their jobs and running out of income. So that's kind of the good news of the survey, and this improvement in the income component has really mitigated the decline in the overall index.
So are tariffs still causing concern among consumers at all at this point, Stephanie?
Yes, we asked them what is driving their view of the economy. So number one this month is inflation. So it has, move again at the top of consumers' worries. Second is tariffs. So it's still there, and it's mostly associated with fear of higher prices. And what I wanted to mention is that we see also some increase in reference to the labor market situation, where consumers are worried about the availability of jobs right now.
So I wonder if there's any kind of seasonal patterns to be aware of as we head into the final quarter of the year. What can we expect to see in the months of October, November, December when it comes to sentiment, when it comes to people's expectations?
So our data are seasonally adjusted, and so there is no seasonal pattern. It's going to really depend on what's happening on the labor market front, which is, if consumers keep on seeing that this hiring freeze in some company, the fact that there are fewer jobs openings, this is the variable that could drive confidence further down. On the other hand, if they see some improvement in the labor market, maybe we'll see some improvement in confidence. So I think it's going to be driven by the labor market situation more than any seasonal patterns.
Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Stephanie Gisha, she's a senior economist at the Conference Board. Coming up, we're going to check in with Nancy Tengler, CEO and CIO of Laffer Tengler Investments, get her thoughts on the markets. Vince Piazza is going to join us as well, Bloomberg Intelligence senior energy analyst. Talk to us about Exxon Mobil. They're cutting 2,000 jobs. It's not the first time we've seen some cuts in the oil patch here, so we'll get the latest on what's happening there. And I'm just looking at oil here. WTI crude oil off 1.3% today, $62.60 per barrel. We're going to have more coming up. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. We're brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. This is for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Major stock averages right now, mixed to little change. The idea of a government shutdown rattling some investors, mostly because if it goes on, we won't have any jobs data on Friday, and the Fed needs that data to inform its path of interest rate decisions. U.S. job openings, that is the data that we got at the top of the hour, rising slightly in August, suggesting relatively steady demand for workers. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has pointed to weakness in the labor market when they lowered their interest rates earlier this month. And ExxonMobil among the stocks on the move, planning to cut about 2,000 jobs globally. Right now, shares of ExxonMobil down 1.1%. Boeing has started working on a next-generation single-aisle aircraft. Could eventually replace the 737 MAX. That's according to the Journal. And shares right now of Boeing, they are down 1.3%. Overall, S&P 500, 3 points lower. The NASDAQ 100, 41 points lower. And the Dow up right now, just 7 points. And then Brent crude is down right now, 1.2%, 67.15 a barrel. And that's why energy is the worst performing of the 11 major industry sectors in the S&P 500. See this one? The next must-have luxury? Saxelby Cheesemongers of Vermont sells up to 60 pounds of cult favorite Animal Farm Creamery butter at $60 per pound.
I agree with high-end butter. I don't know about that price point.
Yeah, it's an online-only flash sale. They sell out in minutes. Every other Friday, exactly 3 p.m. is this sale for $60 a pound. What does it cost in the store? I mean, you know, like
nothing like that.
Land O'Lakes is like $4 a pound.
Yeah, but you don't want to
right?
bake with Land O'Lakes, right? You want to get Kerrygold butter.
You don't?
Yeah, much better. You want to go
Butter? Some
up
butter?
in quality. No, butter is very different. If you go to Amish country, you get the hand-rolled butter, much better for baking.
Really?
Like crispier waffles, crispier everything.
Okay.
Then you can get a goat and just make your own butter.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you do that when you get home.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I will. We check the markets for you all day long, right here. I am the GOAT on Bloomberg Radio. Scarlett and Paul.
All right, greatest of all time, John Tucker. Thank you so much. Paul Sweeney and Scarlett Fu here on Bloomberg Intelligence. We're about an hour into trading, and there's not a whole lot of movement here, even though, Paul, it's been a blockbuster September for equities, defying the historical trend of a weak September.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a tough time historically, seasonally, September, and I still have scars from October of 1987.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do. Let's bring in Nancy Tengler right now. Nancy, of course, is CEO and CIO of Laffer Tengler Investments, and she joins us now on a day, the final day of the third quarter, where it feels like sentiment is turning a little bit, Nancy. Maybe I'm reading too much into the latest consumer confidence data report, conference board data report on how sentiment has declined more than expected. But we do have this shutdown looming, and there are a lot of questions about how we're set up for the end of the year. How are you feeling right now?
Well, Scarlett, thanks so much for having me. I mean, historically, the fourth quarter in a year where the market is up as much as it's up, low double digits, the market has performed 100% of the time, up 6 to 7 to 8%. So I think we have seasonality in our back pocket, but we also have pretty strong earnings growth, and then share buybacks are putting a floor under the price of stock. So that group has been the top performing group, much contributed more to total return than cash flows from institutional and retail investors. So I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, the shutdown's looming. Markets don't usually care. Beyond that, I think we're going to pay attention to earnings. I think the Fed is on the sidelines. If they cut, they cut. If they don't, they don't. So I'm pretty optimistic here.
Nancy, what is your call on earnings here? We had I would say stronger than expected first half of the year in terms of S&P 500 earnings growth. What's your outlook for the back half of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to see acceleration, Paul. We had 6% revenue growth. That was a number that really stood out to me in the first half. And over 80% of companies beating estimates on revenues. I don't recall a time where that's happened in the past. So we're expecting, some modest, maybe margin contraction. We could actually see margin expansion if companies start passing along some of the tariff costs. But regardless, we're near historic highs. And I think we'll see double-digit earnings growth, again, kind of mirroring the first half, or emulating, I guess I should say. Mirroring would be the opposite. I think, we're going to trade on earnings, we're going to trade on fundamentals, and it matters which stocks you own because some companies are being negatively impacted by tariffs. But overall, it's kind of a wash once you factor in the tax cuts from the tax bill.
Right. And that's something that will filter its way through eventually. Nancy, I was looking at the performances of your funds, and you have something called the New Era Value, formerly Equity Income, and New Era Growth, which is formerly Equity Growth. Why rebrand to New Era? What does that say about where we are in this market cycle?
Yeah, Scarlett. So I wrote a book 20 plus years ago called New Era Value Investing, and I'm actually rewriting it right now in the process, and it'll take a while. But that was a time of a new era that was driven by the internet. And as we all know how that ended, and there were reasons for that. But these technologies are much more robust. The companies have fortress balance sheets. And I think it's a time to be thinking about the technologies that are going to drive us into the future. So we also are launching today a new strategy that is focused on quantum and robotics and nuclear and AI and space. And that is an all-cap strategy that we believe will be focused and benefit from the movement into these technologies. And we're seeing it across the board, Scarlett. I mean, every sector, the companies that we own are talking about how powerfully AI is impacting the way they do business. And look no further than Walmart, who reported just the other day, I think it was yesterday, that they are going to keep headcount constant thanks to AI, but they're going to grow while they grow revenues. And we've seen, mid to high single-digit revenue growth. So that's pretty exciting. That's profitability. That's to the bottom line, and it improves margins.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Nancy Tengler, CEO and Chief Investment Officer of Laffer Tengler Investments, joining us there. Looking at ExxonMobil today, some news. Say they're cutting about 2,000 people from their headcount. The stock's off about 1%. This is a company that has almost 61,000 employees. So, a meaningful number there. And we've seen job cuts around other energy companies as well. We want to get a sense of what's happening there. Vince Piazza joins us here. Vince is a senior energy analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Vince, talk to us about what this news from ExxonMobil means. How material is it to you and to investors?
Well, I think it's part of managing through the cycle, right? In prior cycles, the sector was exposed to more extreme volatility, higher highs, lower lows. The industry is trying to manage through what seems to be a rather clouded backdrop right now. So we're sitting here and you got nat gas somewhere around 330, Henry Hub. You got WTI in the low 60s. You have OPEC bringing back on capacity and maybe even speeding up that capacity adds. You have a more clouded, broader economic backdrop across the globe. You have geopolitical issues. So lots of uncertainty. And not only Exxon's probably going to cut somewhere about 2, 3, 4% of its global workforce. Its Canadian affiliate, a much more substantial cut, roughly about 20% over the next 2 years or so. You're seeing it at ConocoPhillips. You're seeing it at Chevron, even BP, the major European energy conglomerate. You're seeing it across the board. And so, Paul, as you know, when you're not growing revenue, right, you're not getting the revenue increase on price. You're not growing production because your investor base does not want to see that production growth. You are looking at very steady revenue, maybe even declining revenue. You have to manage that net back from the cost perspective, and you have to support that cash flow stream. And so you're doing it via these cost cuts over a number of years, 2, maybe even 3 years, to sort of bring that cost structure in line with the new reality of uncertainty in the marketplace to reduce that volatility.
Well, there's cost cuts, and then there's ExxonMobil's cost cuts. Since 2019, its trimmed $13.5 billion in annual costs. That is more than all the other big oil companies combined. How much more room is there for Exxon to slash expenses?
Well, it bought Pioneer, so it has a relatively sizable workforce in general. It doesn't necessarily mean that those cuts are going to come there, but there are ways you cut. You gain efficiency in this technological era where we have advancements across the energy value chain. You will consistently and continually seek out ways to get efficiency, to bring down that cost structure and to bring unit costs in line with a very anemic outlook for global energy prices in general, and also a very clouded outlook for the global economy too.
So, Vince, kind of looking out, 1 to 2 years, what is the view of the companies you talk to about energy prices, oil and gas? Is it still going to be a challenged market here?
It looks like it. It looks like it's going to be a very challenged market, especially for the WTI side, for the oil side of the equation. On natural gas, Paul, I know you and I have talked about this numerous times. You have a structural growth trajectory for natural gas here in the U.S. via export LNG, whether it's seaborne LNG or whether it's pipeline gas into Mexico to help fuel their economy as well. You have the AI build out. Which will digest significant amounts of energy, and that's beneficial for natural gas. But on the oil side, you have very anemic growth. You have your transportation fuels having to compete with alternative and renewable fuels. So there's greater competition there. The growth trajectory and the outlook for the demand side on the liquids fuels seems to be very clouded and seems to be somewhat less secure relative to the natural gas side of the house. And that's why we're much more favorably disposed to Henry Hub and natural gas relative to WTI, Brent, and various liquids fuels.
And before we let you go, Vince, OPEC Plus will be holding a meeting this weekend on Sunday, and there's talk that they will increase or fast track the return of halted production. There's a lot of concern that China and its buildup of its strategic oil reserve might be distorting some numbers or distorting the demand picture. What's your take?
So in general, demand across the globe seems to be less than robust because of, well, you have a global economy that's uncertain. You have tariff policy that has injected more volatility and uncertainty across the globe. So that demand concerns are an issue. The supply side, well, we know where the supply is, and OPEC is reasserting its market share dominance. In the U.S.,
right.
We don't want that production growth. And so it's really coming from the OPEC side of the house, and the demand side of the house is going to be somewhat anemic from here.
Right. All right, Vince, thanks as always. I appreciate always talking global energy with Vince Piazza. He's a senior equity research analyst covering the oil and gas business for Bloomberg Intelligence. Again, Exxon laying off 2,000 employees on about a 61,000 employee base. So meaningful cuts there. We're going to have more coming up. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Right now, the major averages, they have all turned lower. The S&P 500, 18 points lower. That's down 0.3%. We're at 66.42 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, that's down 188 points. The NASDAQ 174 points lower, down about 0.3%. So in the broader index, 5 of the 11 major industry groups in the S&P 500 are higher. Healthcare in the lead right now, and that is home to Merck. Those shares, they were up just over 2.4% right now. Merck announcing positive results from a trial of a drug for pulmonary arterial hypertension. I think this is high blood pressure. Worst performer belongs to energy, as we see oil prices falling right now. And then you have NVIDIA shares. They are the most active, up 1.8%. Investors may be taking kind of a wait-and-see stance in terms of the possibility of government shutdown, which of course would mean that we get a delayed jobs report if it extends into Friday. And meantime, Sean Simmons at UBS, he was on the program earlier today. Investing in artificial intelligence, he says, remains key.
People have to be focused on AI. They have to stay invested in that. And not only on kind of the classical AI trade, right? The semis, the utilities, we've seen those things move, but we're also now starting to talk more and more about the peripheral trade. So we want to be starting to talk about the software.
Millennium Management, one of the biggest Wall Street names to get hit by the sudden unraveling of the auto parts supplier First Brands Group. The loss expected for them to total about $100 million. And interior designers and architects say they're seeing the home office falling farther down the list of must-have for clients in the wake of the return to office mandates. Homeowners now finding new uses for their existing home offices, converting those spare rooms into, I don't know, I would think.
Workout rooms?
Workout rooms, places for the kids.
Karaoke rooms?
What rooms?
Karaoke?
Okay. You pronounce it correctly.
You say karaoke?
Yeah. That's wrong?
Well, I mean, you could say the Japanese way and be karaoke, which would be a little too much.
I'm turning my home
it's like
office
news anchor
into
saying Venezuela.
Venezuela.
Yeah.
Or Nicaragua. Manawa, Nicaragua.
Yeah. Nicaragua.
Anyway, I was going to turn my home office into a brewery.
Yes.
Well, there you go. There's a good one.
A home brew.
Sure, why not?
Anyway, we check the markets for you all day long. Right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash, Scarlett and Paul. Do you like karaoke?
I do. Yeah. What's your go-to song for karaoke?
I've never done it.
What?
Me neither.
Never
okay,
been
field
invited.
trip.
Yes, exactly. There'd be a lot of sake involved in order to get me up there.
That's fine. We can accommodate that.
All right. John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Scarlett Fu, Paul Sweeney live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. Spotify. You know, I'm not a Spotify user, so I don't pay that much attention to it. I should. $144 billion in market cap. The stock's up 50% this year to date. Just extraordinary. The Spotify founder, Daniel Ek, stepping down as CEO. The stock's off about 5% on the news. He's 42 years old. I mean, I don't know.
He's got a lifetime ahead of him.
He's got $10 billion, according to Rich Go, is his net worth. Geetha Ranganathan joins us. She's the U.S. media analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, follows this company. Geetha, talk to us about Spotify. Talk to us about Daniel Ek. What's going on here today?
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. So this is, one of your classic cases of the founder finally kind of establishing a really good transition plan and handing it off to his, two lieutenants here. So we're having a co-CEO structure. And really, I mean, the first, when I heard this, I mean, this really kind of harkens back to what Reed Hastings did with Netflix, kind of left right at the peak, right when the companies, everything was kind of, all cylinders were firing away. And left it to Greg Peters and Ted Sarandos to kind of take charge. And it seems like Spotify is in a very similar position. So they had a couple of things that had to get done this year, which was new contracts with all of the music labels. It looks like Daniel Ek has, accomplished all of that. And I think he's really kind of left the company in a good position for its next phase of growth. And this is really a huge story in the internet space, the possibility to get to 1 billion users very, very quickly. They already have about 700 million.
Okay, so they're almost 3/4 of the way there. He's leaving on top, as George Costanza would in Seinfeld. But my question, Geeta, is you talk about the new phase of growth. How much of that will rely on continued price increases? Unlike Paul, I do subscribe to Spotify, and it's alarming how frequently the price changes come.
Yeah, and it is going to keep coming, Scarlett. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, this whole story is kind of predicated on those price increases. Remember, though, that they never took up prices for the first 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, I missed
and then it started coming fast and furious, right? We had one price increase in 2023, another in 2024. We're going to have probably another one in 2026. But if you kind of look at all of the streaming services out there, Spotify is, of course, the leader in audio streaming. They have a 35% global market share in terms of subscribers. You kind of look at their price, let's say in the US, it's $12 for an individual plan. You compare that to, let's say, the video leader, Netflix. Again, I go back to the Netflix example. They're priced at $18. So I think Spotify still has quite a lot of runway when you kind of compare it to the rest of the field. And the other thing that I like to point out here is when you're kind of subscribing to an audio service, it's typically only one service that you're subscribing to as opposed to a video service. So I think people really like if they like Spotify, they're absolutely going to hold on to it at any cost. And the other thing is, Spotify is adding new features all the time. So they are like really getting down on monetizing more and more, but it's not. They are innovating also constantly. So I think people don't mind paying for it.
What's the biggest challenge to them on the cost side of the business, Geeta?
Music royalties, Paul. I mean, that, for every dollar that they make, they're paying out about 70 cents in terms of music royalties back to the labels. So it is definitely a very, from that perspective, the model is hard. But one of the things that they've done very well is, they've obviously renegotiated a lot of the deals, kind of tried to provide investors with a lot more visibility into the cost base. But more importantly for them, they're really trying to go away from, licensed content to more owned content. So kind of going into, podcasts, going into more non-music content where, again, they have a lot more leverage, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's video podcasts, getting away from, just being a core music service to more of kind of an global kind of an audio service. And they're doing that really well. And that's going to help them with their margin expansion story as they get better unit economics.
Right. And introducing premium tiers on top of that, you have to unlock in order to unlock some of the more, high-profile podcasts, you then have to pay extra. Geeta, talk a little bit about AI, because I keep reading about how AI-generated music is a challenge. But in what way, and could it actually become an opportunity as well for Spotify?
I think so. I think it is going to become, an opportunity as we go. They're already actually using, a lot of AI features when it comes to curation, when it comes to music discovery, when it comes to providing better features. And they're already, and you just brought up the super premium tier. And a lot of that is actually going to be having like an AI DJ type of a feature there, for both listeners as well as music creators. So I think it is definitely going to be, a good opportunity for them to present a much better product. I mean, we've already seen AI being used by a lot of the other platforms. Again, I go back to Netflix because they've done this really well in terms of, having a much better algorithm now to serve up better content. And I think that's exactly what Spotify is doing in terms of its playlists as well.
Keith, I got about 30 seconds left. Where's Apple in this audio game?
So just in terms of subscriber share, Paul, I mean, Spotify, as I said, leads with about 35% share of the market. Apple is really far behind. They have about a 10% share.
Wow.
So very, very hard for them to catch up in terms of subscribers, at least.
All right, Geeta, thank you so much. Appreciate that. As always, Geeta is our go-to person on all things in the media space. Geeta Ranganathan, U.S. media analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence.
How do you get your music?
Sirius XM.
Okay. But then you can't
radio.
Do anything on demand.
No, radio. I mean, radio. I mean, I don't
use
know.
Pandora, but I don't pay for it, so I have to listen to their
You'd
ads.
have to endure the ads.
But
Yeah.
Johnny don't pay.
Yeah. Johnny don't pay. I mean, yes. I mean, I figure I'm cutting edge with my Sirius XM.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you
I
still
think-
have your CDs?
No.
You got rid of all of those?
Yeah.
Okay. We still have CDs, and I don't want to throw them away, but they're obviously useless at this point.
vinyl's coming back.
I know, that's true.
I would say it's come back.
It takes up a lot of space.
It does. And but getting the old turntable out from high school, that works.
Crank it up.
Exactly. All right, we're going to have more coming up. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Scarlett Fu, Paul Sweeney live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. Let's talk a little healthcare here. I'm seeing something. Wall Street Journal's out with a note here. The White House is planning to unveil a direct-to-consumer website for Americans to buy certain drugs dubbed Trump RX. Nice. As well as announce that Pfizer plans to lower prices on several of its medications in the U.S., according to people familiar with the matter. Let's check in with Sam Fazeli. He's a director of research for global industries and senior pharma analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence based over there in London. Sam, we've been kind of waiting for like a President Trump with his most favored nations kind of plan for drug costs. Is this kind of the beginning of that with Pfizer?
Beginning. Now, that's an interesting one. The thing is that pharma companies, Paul, have been announcing these big numbers, 50 billion, 55 billion over the next 5 years, etc., of investment in the US for the past 3-4 months. I mean, we've been adding them up with what Pfizer is supposedly going to announce, which is 70 billion. It goes up to over 400 billion. However, when you dig inside, you find that that's actually their normal R&D spend, their normal CapEx, and maybe a couple of manufacturing facilities. We'll see what Pfizer says, but let's say it this way. Pfizer's CEO is probably one of the most outspoken folks as regards to his high regards for the president. So I'm not surprised that they're doing something together in this thing. Whether it's going to be Trump RX or not, a bunch of other pharma companies have already started doing these direct-to-consumer platforms. The first one was 6-9 months ago with Eli Lilly. So even before any of these conversations started.
Okay, so Eli Lilly, and now according to the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, Pfizer. Who else is next then?
No, so we've already got some others. So I think AstraZeneca reported one. I think Novartis has talked about one. They're all, I mean, the president said, you guys can do this, essentially. You should do this, because what you can do is instead of putting your list price at $100 and giving 50-60% away to the middlemen, pharmacy benefit managers, just bring it to this platform at that price. So when we see some of these prices announced, we are launching this price on this particular platform of our direct-to-consumer at a 50% discount. But it's actually the money they get from the deal that they do with the pharmacy benefit managers. So the pharma companies aren't losing. What is happening is what should have been happening for years is cutting out the middlemen.
So who are those middlemen? What companies are they?
The pharmacy benefit managers. I mean, these are essentially insurance companies who own quite a few of these benefit managers who help employers manage their drug costs, for want of a better, for their employees. In the end, of course, because they end up being owned by the same people, it ends up being a virtuous circle, I would use here, not vicious, virtuous circle as it pertains to their profits and what they take out of these higher and higher price negotiations and fatter net the rebates and discounts they get from the pharma companies, a lot of which gets passed through the system still in terms of lowering premiums, but not all of it.
So we don't know so far what kinds of medications would be available on this government website at this discounted price. Right. But do you expect that anti-obesity drugs might make an appearance there?
Well, so that then, of course, depends on Lilly, whether they're going to divert some of their efforts from their own platform onto what I think some journals are calling Trump RX. I don't know how that would work. Is it a for-profit organization? Is it a governmental organization? What is it? And if it's just an organization that's going to help pharma companies, so it's run by the government, help pharma companies get access to consumers, then that's a good thing. But we'll have to see the detail. I'm seeing lots of headlines come through, no detail.
Sam, what's the world like for biotech M&A? It's been such a big part of the growth story for a lot of these big pharma companies. If they can't, make it in the lab, they can go out there and acquire it. Is that still the case?
Yeah. I mean, Paul, folks in the lab are much more incentivized to develop the great ideas when they're in the wrapper of a biotech company than when you have 5,000 scientists in a pharma company. And you can't legislate that great science happens in a pharma company. So the pharma companies have to go where the great science has happened. And a lot of that goes into biotechs. So, and this year is possible that we might end up having actually quite a bumper year, not in terms of big deals like 50, 60, $70 billion deals, but the sum of the deals is adding up quite nicely. We had one last week and then one this week. So this week is actually a bigger biotech buying a smaller biotech, which is Genmab buying a company called Mirus. And what I love about it, Paul, if I just can set this quickly, is that some of these companies that folks are buying had share prices that were languishing in the whatever they were levels were. I mean, if you look at Mirus, MRUS is the ticker on the terminal, you see that it's come up way from where it was at $10. It just shows the power of science translating into a good drug for patients.
All right, good stuff. Thank you so much for the rundown on all of this. Sam Fazeli, our Director of Research for Global Industries and Senior Pharmaceuticals Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us from London. Clearly a lot of developments. And anytime you talk about biotech, it's really a lottery ticket, any of those names.
It is. That's why I think the hedge funds love biotech so much, because you can have some big alpha there.
And that's why, as an individual investor, probably the way to go about it that makes the most sense is through some kind of ETF that exposes you to the sector, because otherwise you'd be picking winners and losers.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's impossible.
And you notice all the analysts and the buy-siders who do healthcare, they're all PhDs or MDs. They're not. They understand the science, unlike us. All right, for our folks in the U.S., a reminder, you can listen to us via satellite radio on Sirius XM Channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 121 is presented by Oracle. Stay tuned for the latest market news and industry research. The next hour of Bloomberg Intelligence starts right now.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney.
Concern about rising prices spooking investors.
What does renewables investment look like in the U.S.?
More tariff talk coming out of this administration.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe.
The president wants lower interest rates. He wants a rate cut cycle.
How do you broaden out the AI play?
Are people just looking for something to worry about when it comes to China?
Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
All right, coming up in this hour, Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney. We're driving the bus forward here. We're going to take a look at what's happening in the markets with Norma Linda. She'll join us here. Ira Jersey, Bloomberg Intelligence Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist. We're going to get his thoughts on some of this economic data we had today and what it might mean for this Federal Reserve. Anurag Rana, he's the Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Technology Analyst. CoreWeave inks a $14 billion Meta deal. And the latest sign of AI demand. Unbelievable, the money that's being spent there. Henrietta Trez is going to join us, Managing Partner and Director of Economic Policy at Veda Partners. Going to give us her thoughts on this pending government shutdown at midnight tonight. So a lot happening up. We also have on standby President Trump from the Oval Office. We'll have some remarks, and we will bring them to you when he speaks. Right now, let's go to John Tucker and get a Bloomberg Business Flash, John.
All right, guys, and this Bloomberg Business Flash being brought to you by Commonwealth. Join over 2,000 independent financial advisors who are taking control of their growth with advisor-centric support and future-ready technologies. Grow on your terms with a partner dedicated to your success. Go to commonwealth.com to learn how. Right now, the major stock averages, they are mixed to little change. The S&P 500 down just 2 points, 66.58 on the index. The Dow down 100 points. The NASDAQ 100, that is higher right now, up 16 points. Oil extending a sharp decline as OPEC Plus considers boosting the pace of its output hikes. And as a result, energy racks up as the worst performing industry group in the S&P 500. Now, in terms of the index points, the leading stocks are NVIDIA, Apple, and Microsoft. The laggards right now in the S&P 500 include Amazon, Meta Platforms, and Alphabet. You mentioned CoreWeave, Paul, ticker symbol CRWV. Those shares up close to 16%. They signed a deal with Meta. As much as $14.2 billion worth of computing power is what they're going to provide. And as we wait for word of a funding agreement or not in Congress, Monica Guerra at Morgan Stanley says stocks can actually rally through any government shutdown.
So essentially they see through it, stay exuberant, but where you see any sort of pullback or correction, it's around those industries and sectors that have heavy reliance on contracts, defense, like healthcare in certain instances. And we think, especially on defense, right, that could be a nice buy opportunity.
Is Kindle still a thing? Google's Kindle?
Yeah.
I have one, but I haven't.
Yeah.
I like
Great for the beach.
I like the
sun.
physical book, but anyway, Amazon's revamping the Kindle lineup. They're going to have a scribe device with a color screen and a slew of home security and TV devices. It's a part of the renewed hardware push.
A color screen? I thought the whole point was that the other black and white screen was better for your eyes.
Yeah, and you can see it in the sun. That's the key thing.
But I can't get over a physical book. I just love the feel of it.
I like it too. I like the smell of the pages.
Yep.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm into books.
We check the markets for you all day long right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash, Scarlett and Paul.
I'm into stocks as well, and so is Nora Melinda. And
Do you smell them?
No, I don't smell them. Bloomberg's Nora Melinda here with some stocks on the move today. Nora, get us started with Verizon.
Yes, Verizon and EchoStar in focus. Ticker VZ for Verizon and SATS here for EchoStar. We're looking at the two companies right now. We've got EchoStar shares jumping after news that it will be engaging in some talks to sell some of its wireless spectrum to Verizon Communications. If you look more broadly, this stock has really been on a tear this year, up 230% so far year to date. And of course, this news with Verizon in terms of the conversations that they're having definitely follows what we were looking at back in late August about AT&T buying some spectrum licenses from EchoStar for about $23 billion in cash here. So we know EchoStar really has relationships with a few of these other companies, AT&T, SpaceX as well. So lots to really dig into for this company, really seeing some strong gains here for investors.
Again, about time. We've waited for a dozen years for these returns. So there we go. Okay,
Right.
what else?
Also looking at shares of Spotify, that's ticker SPOT here, sliding down as much as 5.6%. That's the worst since July here in terms of daily performance. And this is after news that its CEO, Daniel Ek, is stepping aside after leading the company for almost 2 decades here. He was one of the co-founders of the company, but they will be promoting 2 people here that were co-presidents. They will be jointly running the company moving forward here. But of course, this has really been a challenging time more broadly when you think about Spotify and a lot of these streaming different platforms here, especially as you think about AI kind of coming in and kind of challenging the order here. So it's a bit of a time of flux right now, especially with growth slowing to its lowest rate in years, especially as we have streaming kind of maturing in some of those major markets here. So definitely a lot going on there with Spotify, seeing a slide of as much as 5.6%.
And I'm just bracing myself for more price hikes from Spotify as well.
I know.
Speaking